3000.
All right, my name's Maloney. This is the 3000 podcast. I'm joined today by a guest that has been heavily requested, multiple requests. I'm joined today from Frank. Man, I never fucked this up. I fucked it up.
Start again, man.
Start
Let's
again.
go.
I've never done that. Adam, that's the first time I've ever never first taked it. All right, here we go. My name's Maloney. This is the 3000 podcast. I'm joined today by a heavily requested guest. We have Frank from Union Heights, a.k.a. Slap618. Frank, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Maloney. Thanks for having me.
Man, you've been a tremendous help since I've started this thing, and I'm always bouncing some ideas off you and asking for your input, so it's awesome to actually get you here, sitting in the chair behind the mic and on the show, so I appreciate it, man.
Pleasure's mine, mate. It's it's just great the opportunities come up, and here we are.
We are, yeah. Well, someone else kind of had some things move around, and you have come in at short notice, which is awesome. But I'm stoked, and the person who has missed out, they'll be on in a couple of weeks. So.
Yeah, they'll be great too, man.
Yeah.
I know you got a good lineup.
Yeah, so there's definitely some good crew coming up. But let's start in the beginning. I know you're a proud Melburnian now, and you've been here for quite a long time. But where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Wollongong, which is about 80 k's south of Sydney. What do you want to know about that, man? It's bless all the crew out in Wollongong, still keeping it real.
Yeah, so
holding it down.
So in Wollongong, kids are you surfing? You're riding skaties, pushies. What are kids doing?
All of that. Literally lived, really close to the beach. Wollongong predominantly, it was steel industry back then in the 70s, 80s, real heavy with industry. Real strong kind of footy culture, surf culture, real bogan, that typical kind of, regional surf kind of city. Mm-hmm. So what were we doing? I was just like out in the burbs, just bored, riding bikes, throwing rocks at
as kids
trains, because they had like train lines just at the end of my street.
Industrial trains, like.
It was like the regional train, that went through Wollongong, and also very much industrial. So a lot of freights running through there day and night.
Yeah.
And stuff, and then beyond that train line, it was like being in the what's that movie? Was it Stand By Me? Maybe
Yeah.
So you'd go over that train line, and then there would be like this huge reserve. And just trees, and then once you walked into that, there were like tracks everywhere, and people would be riding BMXs there and stuff. So you just lose yourself and playing there for hours as well. So, but that's like pre-high school, and just your whole world was like 4 streets, a certain block, and that was it,
Yeah.
But
and your push bike could take you wherever you wanted within those.
within those limits, a lot of hills and that kind of stuff. So you always avoided the places with hills and kept on the flat.
Stayed on the flat.
Yeah.
And so when does hip hop culture come into the piece for you?
So I guess, I'm part of that textbook 80s generation, Beat Street, Style Wars, Beat Street and Breaking really, and then Style Wars and all that sort of came a bit later into my hands anyway. So I clearly remember it, man. It was like a super, super hot summer. School holidays, and I'd had relatives that lived up the road. This is the other cool thing about where I grew up. I had like my aunties and uncles live within the same neighbourhood, I got Italian heritage, so everyone, that moved here, they all sort of lived in the same kind of suburb or close by. So, I had relatives really close by. So I walked up the street to go to my godmother's house, and we called them cousins back then. They weren't technically my cousins, but my cousins were in the lounge room. Blinds are pulled shut, it's dark, and they're watching this movie on their TV on the VHS, and I just walked in, and all I saw was this train roll by, and it was just covered in graff, and I was just like, what the is this? You know, like, what's this? And just going, it's like, sit down, shut up, sit down, watch this. And, you know, because they were a bit older than me, you know, 2 to 4 years older than me. And they were breakers. They were heavily into breaking already. They were in a crew called the Euro Breakers. So,
because of the Italian heritage?
Yep. So the rule for their crew was you had to be of European descent to be in that crew. And I don't know if what it was like here in Melbourne back then in the 80s, you know, 86, whatever it was. But we had like the Euro Breakers, Latino Breakers, and I can't even remember what the Aussie Breakers were called, but they weren't called the Aussie Breakers. They were called something else. But it was this thing where, now I digress, but we moved to a tangent already.
That's good though, man.
Where hip-hop early on back then was like, it was obviously, you know, like from kids from the ghetto, the oppressed and all that, right? So for us, being wogs and being, you know, a minority at our schools and this and that, it's almost like hip-hop and breaking became this thing that we could latch onto and be a part of something, right?
Yeah, rather than go play footy or whatever.
Yeah, you know. So anyway, so they were in this crew called the Euro Breakers, and they're saying, Frank, shut up and watch this. And I just sat there on the lounge, glued to this movie called Beat Street. And it was just like, whoa, what the hell is this, you know? And it sort of blew my mind. But then after that, it's almost like, it's not like I went, okay, I'm going to start breakdancing and do this kind of other stuff, because I was quite young. So I was just exploring everything, you know, like whatever was interest, watching cartoons and riding BMX bikes up and down the street and creating jumps in your front yard and whatever. And skateboards, you know, like penny board style skateboards and that.
Yep.
Had a good driveway, go to the top, come straight down, do that all day and night.
Surfing.
Yeah, man, heaps. So it wasn't, so that was me in about year 7, I reckon it was. And then as I got older in a high school, we sort of, you meet new people, you know, at high school, and they come from all around the whole area. So it wasn't just the guys in your small neighborhood anymore. And, you know, I started meeting people that were into hip hop and whatever. And, you know, so I had a mate called Mark at the time, and he lived in like a few suburbs away from me, because I went to like a all boys Catholic school called Edmund Rice College. Because, you know, being Italian, you got to go good Catholic school. You got to be a good boy. Yeah. You learn the Jesus Christ and all that stuff, you know. So fucking hell, mate, you know. So anyway, because of that school, it brought kids from everywhere, from northern suburbs, southern suburbs.
Opened your horizons.
Opened it huge, you know. So I met all these different people and stuff. It was really cool. So I met this guy, Mark, and he was like into hip hop as well. And, you know, he's like, oh man, you got to meet this guy. He's got like, his whole fence is just covered in pieces. It's just like graph, the whole thing. It's like his parents are really cool, and he's got like his own graph wall in his backyard and stuff. So his name was Matt. So I'd go over to Mark's house, and then we'd go, he goes, you got to come meet Matt. And so we go meet Matt, and no word of a lie, his whole back fence would have been about 10 meters long. And there were just like these pieces in the backyard that were like straight, you know, bites out of like Subway art.
Yeah.
You know, because you're only 14.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, well, you know, you want to learn how to draw Donald Duck. You just sit there learning Donald Duck. But in this case, it's like, I want to draw like Scene. I want to do that piece and this and that. So they were just like these characters and these letters, but he flipped the letters to be his own word. And it was just like, bang, you know, Subway art come to life on this guy's fence.
Yeah.
So, you know, we just kept progressing from that. You know, I was never really a breaker. I was more into, you know, the art side of it. And, you know, I'd sort of dabbled a little bit, but it wasn't like, I was going out at night and killing it with me mates at 14. And, you know, it wasn't sort of the environment in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know, like...
And were there other people that did... You said that the ethnics latched onto this hip-hop thing. Were the surfers and the bogan people like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, they hated it, you know, like anything new that challenged the status quo. It was like, bloody rap music, bloody whatever, you know. So, you'd meet in the mall on a Thursday night and there'd be dudes breaking, on cardboard and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it came with a lot of opposition, obviously, so you're always in a minority. And it was always that way growing up until, even into our late teens, into our 20s. Anyone that was into hip-hop and graffiti art stuff back in Wollongong back then, you could literally at one point count the amount of riders on your hands and that kind of thing, and people that were known to me at the time. Because
so there was a small scene.
Very, very small scene, like if you caught a train, you'd see a few little hits and pieces around the city, around Wollongong, and then the train line going up north and that kind of thing. But nothing super crazy. And
how were you acquiring your supplies back then? Like hardware stores and that sort of thing?
Yeah, there was mainly hardware stores. So, how everyone acquired paint back then. So...
But there was hardware stores and that sort of
thing. Yeah. But, you'd be going to Kmart and going to the auto section to go get the Dupli auto paints and that kind of thing. So, but...
if there's not a huge scene, then maybe they're not as onto it.
They weren't onto it as much, Like, I remember one time where I was, like, calculated and planned on acquiring paint, and I had the paint stand and everything in one section, and I'd pick my colours and then I'd move it to another section, but then I'd leave it there and I'd come back later and it was still there, and I'll be like, oh, well, no one's paying attention here and whatever.
Yeah.
I'm very aware that probably my kids are going to be watching this. So.
We can anything you want to chop, we can.
Yeah.
So, okay, there is a small scene there, but obviously you're only 80 k's out of Sydney. So, are you going to Sydney, checking out what's going there?
So, yeah. So, as in, you'd get a school excursion when you're like in year 9, and you go, right, we're going up to Sydney Museum or whatever. And then you're like, sick, we catch a train up to Sydney, These are the days when trains, you can pull back the doors and whatever. Yeah. And that was it. Like, as soon as you left, there'd be Wollongong, and then there's this huge section that you go through in national parks. That's all green and really nature, and it's beautiful. And then once you hit, that's sort of like your buffer zone, and then you start hitting the city like Waterfall and going up from that. And then it was on, like you're seeing like proper burners and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And you're just like glued out the window wanting to do that trip again and again and again. So I guess really like for me, things really, really didn't start popping off until I was about like 16, 17 and having a bit more freedom to do stuff. And sort of latching into a youth program in Wollongong, like Wollongong Youth Services, so like the local youth centre. Mm-hmm. And my mate Mark was like doing like a drama group thing there, and he's like, hey man, you should come to this youth group thing. Youth workers there are cool, like they let you do stuff and it's fun and whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. But they had this ad in the paper, oh, we got a new youth centre and we want artists to come in and paint murals there. And I'm thinking, sick, let's go like do some graph at the youth centre. Mind you, there's like no legal graph shit going on around that period, right? So I go there with my little sketchbook and got my hat on with a little burner piece on the trucker hat, like, yo, here to do some, mural stuff and that. And the lady, like the youth worker's like, oh yeah, what are you doing? I'm like, showing pieces and that. And they're like, no, we're not having any of that here. Mm. We're doing things with brushes and this and that. And I was just like, oh, thanks. Broken, like dream. It's like, oh, I thought I was going to be able to do something in the community and then whatever. But then there was another youth worker there. And, a bit later on, he sort of found out what we were doing, and he's like going, hey guys, like, we got opportunities for you guys to do something, but it's not going to be this, but we'll do something else. We'll get you to paint this thing in the mall or do this and that. And his name's David. And yeah, so he just took a few of us under his wing, as a youth worker does, you know, to support young people in their creative pursuits. And basically, like, sat there and listened and goes, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And then just hooked us up with little opportunities to paint walls and that kind of thing.
Which
I
is
guess,
an awesome opportunity, and he actually cared.
Yeah,
you know?
he cared, you know, like it was a big thing because I went from, you know, totally being told to just piss off, take your graffiti and get out of here.
Yeah.
You know, this council doesn't encourage that kind of thing, to total opposite, where it was, you know, open arms, welcoming. And, you know, I think he was just genuinely interested in what graffiti was about because he was like a rocker.
Yeah.
You know, I was into the Ramones and...
But he probably
you know,
felt that he was pushing that rock stuff when the generation before him probably weren't fucking taking that on board.
Exactly right, man. It's like you can pull so many things, so many similar paths between punk rock, hip hop, you know, anything that's that DIY aesthetic, you know, like...
Yeah, and I think obviously anyone who's schooled in the whole origins of hip-hop understands that the punk rock scene and hip-hop was very close together in that underground scene when it started in New York.
Oh,
so, and I think a lot of people that probably aren't that well-versed think, they're totally polar opposites, but they couldn't be more similar, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In a whole bunch of ways.
Yeah, and you know, you do your research and you read that, you know, some of these venues that were allowing the pioneering DJs from New York hip-hop playing these venues were the same venues that had the people playing, you know, pioneering punk music and rock music that was, you know...
But even look at like Blondie, like Deborah Harry,
Yeah.
with the way that she sort of brought rap in, and she was, you know, she's referencing Fab Five Freddy and stuff like that.
Yeah,
In that sort
yeah.
of, it's all kind of sort of cut from the same cloth.
Yeah. It's all living within each other. Like, it's all part of, you know, they're all separate little satellite scenes, but they all come together under that same kind of common bond of, you know, being, you know, DIY and being against the system, whatever, but, you know, just something that's pushing, something that's, you know, driven from your heart and soul, that you want to create something new, you know, not just follow the mainstream.
Well, you look at zines, like they're big in that punk scene and very big in the hip hop scene.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? So it's all very interconnected. And that
Yeah,
sort of,
yeah.
So that's all. Sorry, man, I went on a bit of a tangent there, but it's also
No,
that
it's really cool, man. I like it.
He understood that, so he took you, and then so he's showing you different walls and giving you opportunities.
Yeah,
and that
started
sort of
giving us opportunities to do stuff legally and that kind of thing. And I guess people probably thinking, oh, fuck, man, why are you jumping straight into this legal shit? And I'm like, when I was younger, I sort of did something when I was 16. I got in a lot of trouble and I went to court, you know, so...
And when you're 16, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it was pretty fucked, you know, and sort of made me think. And it's not like, you know, I wanted to be... I just learnt pretty quick. I didn't want to be that kid going down that path, you know, like I had good parents and a good home and, you know, I just wanted to do the right thing. So, yeah, I just played this game of, you know, bombing and doing a bit of tagging and that kind of thing, but sort of caught on pretty quick that if I do this thing, this legal stuff, and work within this community centre, youth centre stuff, maybe I can do something really cool in this area in Wollongong to sort of push graffiti art and hip hop. Because, you know, at the time too, while the graph thing's going on, I'm starting to meet guys at school that are really, really into hip hop and writing their own lyrics and that kind of thing. And we're all, you know, hang out at lunchtime and just, you know, talk about hip hop, read the mags and fantasize about doing gigs one day and that kind of thing. And, you know,
it's funny, like, when you say writing lyrics and stuff, because I feel like that for a while, Aussie hip-hop, well, there was the graffiti culture was around for a long time before the dudes started making music themselves, like, before they thought, hey, let's start doing the rap sort of stuff as well as the graph sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Like it sort of took a little bit to sort of click into gear. Like, we could be doing that too, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that was... my opinion on that is that spray cans and cardboard for breaking were a lot easier to access than a 4-track multi-recorder, microphones, turntables, mixer. That stuff back then, it still is expensive, but back then, it just, when you were 15, it was just like, you ain't having that.
No, and they didn't have it at the music schoolroom either.
No,
you know what
man,
I mean?
like, that's the thing. It just wasn't there with the, if they had a synthesizer and drum kit and,
But you can nick
keyboard.
a marker from art class and you're on.
Yeah, you're on, Geez, you can go down to Amart K and get your dupli paints, and next thing you know, it's all on.
But so that is a whole new thing, because now you're thinking, all right, these guys are writing lyrics, and then I'm guessing that's where DJing sort of kicks off for you as well, like when you start.
Yeah, not yet, but these guys that I was with at high school, and sort of like as we sort of finished high school, they got more serious. One of them was actually DJing. His name's Diego. And he was the first guy I met that had his own set of decks and mixer in his bedroom and stuff. And he was making mixtapes and shit.
Like a proper mixer back then.
Yeah, man. He was dope, man. He was making like these mega mixers, 45 minutes each side, and dubbing them and selling them and that kind of thing, man. That was dope.
Where's he getting his records from? Is there a record store
He
there?
was, well, yeah, I guess you could go in Wollongong and get some records, like your mainstream kind of stuff that was hitting, your Run DMC and,
But it would have been
Beastie
pretty
Boys.
few and far between.
It's really few and far between. Like everything in our life growing up in Wollongong is you had to get on that train or get in the car and go to Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where hanging out with those dudes like Diego, Paul and some other guys, it'd be like Saturday 8:30, 9 a.m. train straight up to Sydney, and they'd take me to all these record shops and the second-hand record shops, and they're digging for 12s and stuff, and I didn't have a job, I didn't have money, so I was just that kid that was just there to just absorb everything and learn everything that they were doing, because they were like a year or two older than me. So they were like, mentoring me, and I was under their wing. But the good thing that goes back to the youth centre here in Wollongong at the time is like, they were like, well, man, you guys are doing some crazy shit. Like we're so used to just seeing people with guitars and this and that. And they started opening doors for us to bring in the turntables and a mixer and start doing live hip hop and this kind of thing. And it wasn't till about 91, 92 when they actually opened Wollongong's first like major, purpose, or it wasn't purpose built, but they basically transformed Wollongong's original art gallery space into a youth centre.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty big deal because it's a massive building. It's unreal. And then it was on, like there were rooms there for people to do live gigs. There was, like a music room that had equipment in it for people to jam in.
Yeah.
When they acquired the building, it was just this, sky blue colour. And the whole point was that, they'd done all these workshops with graph writers and stuff and other street art. It wasn't called street art then, it was just mural art. And they said, well, this building is great, but let's paint murals all over the thing. And we're like, fuck, sick, And
they're supplying all the paint?
They're supplying the paint, but they did this stuff where, again, being a youth centre, it's all about mentoring. So we were young, and they were getting like these highly professional qualified mural artists had been painting large-scale murals around Australia.
Yeah.
To come in and hang out and sort of teach young kids how to do this stuff. And we're like, yeah, sick, but we want to use spray paint.
Yeah.
And this guy's like, nah, you're not using spray paint. Spray paint is really bad quality paint. It's going to fade. It won't last forever, blah, blah, blah.
And it probably was back then. Or the automotive stuff would have been good.
Yeah. Some of your enamel paints were cool. But yeah, look, hate to admit it at the time, but he was right. He put like bloody spray guns in our hands. We were doing stuff with spray guns for the large stuff.
Yeah, like airbrush or like a
like
airless spray.
Almost industrial like spray guns.
Which you could do some cool shit with that though.
Yeah, you're doing like lines this big and that or to that. But the I guess the halfway point was all right, well, do all that, do all your fills like that, but all your detail, you can do your spray cans, you know? So we're doing all the outlines in, you know, like proper, you know, enamel paints and whatever else. And
Well, it's cool that he let you fucking, you know, still do what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
And
You know,
taught you to
I'm
work
sure,
with different mediums. And
yeah, I'm sure we really pushed for it because we'd done all these little workshops before and all this other stuff leading up to it. And throughout the whole process of this design thing, because you can imagine it's run through council, so there's like months of preparation,
red tape
to paint these things that have to then be approved by certain people and whatever. And the whole time I'm sort of talking to David and Michael and all these people that work at the centre about setting up like a legal wall. And I said, man, we have to have like a legal wall on the back wall. The wall that doesn't face the main street, that's just in the back, you know, it's still quite open. Next door was like the Country Women's Association.
I'd love that.
Oh, they were really lovely. They loved it in the end. Come out with, you know, your tea and that.
Some scones.
Scones. And they're like, yep, you guys can do your legal wall stuff at the back and we'll run workshops there and stuff. So it was like 1991, first pieces went up there, you know? Like,
yeah. And a lot of people would never have seen, because if you haven't watched, a lot of people wouldn't have seen much, like in Wollongong, like they wouldn't have seen that stuff out in the wild, you know?
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
Like if you're not watching Beach Street, if you're not paying attention to magazines, how many graffiti pieces are they seeing around? Like,
yeah, not many. It's not like, you know, you're not in a big city, so it's not like coming to Melbourne in 86 and 88 where there's, you know, things going on at Spencer Street and this and that, you know, like
it would have been
big movements.
Yeah,
you know?
I could imagine that some people were like, what even is this sort of
thing? Oh, what's this vandalism? Oh, this graffiti. Oh.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but I'm sure you've got the youth workers there that can say, like, this is actually something that's sanctioned, blah, blah, blah. If the kids are doing it here, they're not painting down the street, that old one. You know?
Yeah, you know, and I was like really pushing for this whole thing of acceptance and understanding. So, you know, I was looking at looking towards people like Phase 2, you know, a lot, and he had this book and he was talking a lot about drop the G word, you know. It's like, you know, don't call it graffiti, call it aerosol art, you know. And so we were like young going, oh, you know, it's not graffiti, it's aerosol art, you know, trying to package it and sell it, make it palatable.
Take the stigma out of it.
Yeah,
but
doing
then,
that.
But then in the 90s, aerosol became a bad word too.
Yeah.
Because people like aerosols.
Yeah, man. Yeah, CFCs and all that.
All that stuff. But
anyway.
Yeah, so that's cool. So you've got your spot there, but I guess eventually you outgrow that, do you? Or you're happy?
Well, it's kind of weird, and I'm not weird. It was just this natural progression. So I finished high school and I started uni, and I was really quite heavily involved with the youth centre and sort of really liked what the youth workers were doing.
And you're mentoring there?
So I was running graph workshops when I was like 17, 18. And then I went to uni and at Wollongong to do a sociology kind of major, arts degree, knowing, you know, talking to the youth workers, I said, you know, do this kind of stuff and get into community work. And they said, what we'll do, like, end up getting a job there, running graph workshops, and eventually, because I was doing the degree, I got a job there as a casual youth worker. Mm-hmm. So I was learning all about youth work as well as, you know, doing art stuff.
And you're getting paid to basically hang out where you would hang out anyway and
do
more art stuff. So it's pretty fucking win-win.
Yeah. So there was a stage in my life where I think it was almost if it wasn't every Saturday, it was every second Saturday. I was there from like 10 o'clock or whatever, 11 o'clock till 4, running graph workshops.
Yeah.
And, you know, you could sign up and come to a workshop, and, you know, I was sort of running them with other people, and because of that legal war, it sort of did this thing where it drew all the writers that you never knew about that were living in different suburbs, drew everyone into that space because everyone heard about it and wanted to paint there.
I'm guessing kids from even other little towns that are, you know, out more remote little towns that are around as well are coming.
Yeah, well, look, it's back then, I guess something that's 30 k's away feels like it's forever.
Yeah.
You know, so and And, you know, trains weren't super fast back then and whatever. You know, mate.
Back
Yeah,
in
back in
my
my day. The diesel train.
All right, we'll be back to the guests in a moment. But if you could, just hit that subscribe button. I need everyone to fucking subscribe. We're not asking for any money. It's not hard. It only takes a second. Hit the subscribe button and help us out. Cheers.
But yeah, like we were starting to meet all these artists that were like, you know, from the far north, the far south, and it brought everyone together, and it sort of became a hub. The youth centre became a hub for all these people to meet that were into hip hop, into graffiti, into punk music, skateboarding, everything. So yeah, met all these artists, and then everyone becomes really good friends, and you start doing more and more and more, and you know, so running these workshops, doing all this stuff. You know, doing a lot of legal stuff during the day, and then maybe some of the participants at night were maybe doing other stuff. I don't know. I can't remember.
I can't remember
What happened. It was a hazy time. But it was great, you know, like it became, the youth centre there back in the 90s became this real hub for nurturing creatives in Wollongong. So, you know, we just all kept pushing, and a lot of good things came out of that place.
Is it still there?
It is, yeah. Yep. It's still there. A lot of the people that I used to work with there have moved on to other things. Some are school teachers, some are even higher up in council now, doing great stuff. But yeah, the centre itself is still there. It's still covered in artworks.
Amazing.
It's it is amazing. It's even like I think Phibbs has done workshops there now.
Yeah.
He's moved to the area and stuff, so it's
cool.
kind of interesting. All these people. We always used to have to go to Sydney to get everything and whatever. Now all these people from Sydney have moved to Wollongong.
I know people that
to
moved
escape it.
Yeah, I know people that have grown up here in Melbourne and they've moved there because it's slightly more affordable. They say
absolutely.
But
well, it was at a certain point.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID and all that, like even a few years before that. But yeah, not anymore.
Not anymore. So you're doing all that sort of stuff, and then where does it? You've got to think you're going to have to sort of go to Sydney or Melbourne if you're going to go bigger and better. Is that what you're thinking, or where
I guess, truly, yeah. Because look, I was doing work there. I was youth working. I started doing community radio stuff with like the guys that were into doing the music, and that's like 93, I think. 92.
And that's within that sort of community, sort of creative hub, or that's
the radio stuff was through 2Vox FM, so like a community radio station, which was literally a converted 2-bedroom house that had 2 studios, an office, and a meeting room, common room. And through a mutual friend, we met this guy who was doing like an R&B kind of hip-hop R&B show, and he goes, I don't have enough hip-hop, do you guys want to come in and play 2 hours of hip-hop and I'll do the first 2 hours R&B? And it sort of just stemmed from that. So, you know, every Saturday night, you know, we started this radio show, and then eventually this guy left and the show got cut down to 2 hours, and I was like, well, this is our chance, this is going to be a hip-hop show, you know, so we called it like the Big Payback. And it was like a payback on all those suckers playing fake R&B, crap, rap, and shit. We were just playing the real deal.
Could you have swearing on there?
No.
So you had to have clean edits. Yeah.
We had to get our CDs and go through every song and mark down on the back which songs were clean and playable for air. And we had stickers. If you go through my CD collection, you pull out a CD, go, well, why's this got 1, 6, 8, 4, and 14 on it? And that was because they were the 4 tracks we could play on air.
You could use the cough button, but I guess you got to be pretty.
Nah, man, no cough button then.
No,
you'd actually, I don't know, you'd have to flick a switch or something. But because like everything in Wollongong, we had a lot of people against what we were doing. So there were people on the board of directors of the radio station like, oh, this bloody rap crap! I can't believe we're letting them have this. And they were like honest. They were like these older people in their probably 50s and 60s listening just to catch us out and get us off air, you know.
They were trying to cancel you.
Yeah. But we just kept at it. And so, the show started in 92. We had various presenters come through.
And is this where so the Slap name, is that coming from the graffiti side of
or
the DJ side?
Slap was from the graffiti side. And I said, well, you know, once I started DJing, I just transferred the name to that.
And the 618?
All right, so so I used to work through uni. I used to have a job to pay the bills, and so I was working at this Pizza Hut delivery unit, and in the car park, you know, to have your car parked there, and all the drivers and everyone else have their cars there. At the end of the shift, you know, we'd always sit around and have something to drink and debrief and eat and whatever. And then we went to the car park, and we go to our cars and we look at I was looking at the number plates, and I'm like, what the hell's going here? You know, like my car ended in 618, and two other guys that worked there, their cars ended in 618. And we're talking about cars from different generations too,
yeah.
right? And I was like, oh, well, man, I'm just going to throw that on the end of my tag now and call myself Slap 618.
Yeah.
You know, because you had the three numbers, like, which was a New York thing.
187.
Like, yeah,
tacky
yeah.
and all that sort
which
of
is
stuff.
more about their street name or number.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where that came from. So now you all know.
There you go.
Yeah.
Did the other guys embrace the 618 as well?
One of them wasn't into hip hop, and the other guy was a rapper, so he wasn't going to chuck that in his name. He had a different hip hop name. So.
There you go. No, because I sort of counted back and did the whole, like, you know, A is 1 and did that, and I'm like, it doesn't
stand for anything, like, you know. Yeah.
But there you go. That's pretty cool though.
Yeah. That's just my little thing.
That's your thing. And so you're playing records there. You're doing the clean edits. You're doing all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then, this other dude's rapping? Are you thinking about producing some tunes? Where are you going in that sort of creative musical sort of journey?
Look, I focused just on DJing, and you know, when I wasn't DJing, I was painting every other weekend.
Yeah. And you're cutting at this stage?
I didn't get my first set of decks until 94.
Yep. Which was probably a year after you started the radio show.
Yeah, 91, 90. Yeah, so a couple of years after radio. So I was starting to already build like a pretty decent music collection, you know, records and CDs. But, you know, and I was constantly trying to save money at the same time to buy decks. And then when I moved out of home and stuff and had my own room and all this space, I said, damn, I'm going to buy some decks now, you know. And I bought a pair of secondhand decks. You know, so decks,
1200s?
yeah, 1200s.
They still like cost the same now as they did back then, basically.
Yeah,
man. They hold their value like fucking crazy.
Yeah, they're great workhorses, and it came with a, you know, like a realistic mixer with, you know, little effect buttons that were like all these digital effect sounds that I learnt quite early that they were like all the sounds I used to use in those dub kind of sessions, you know, like all those laser effects and stuff, and that was sick.
So would you bring that into the radio show?
So the radio was still about just being stuck in this time machine of like an old kind of.
So you're not mixing
studio.
records,
We're
you're
not
just
really
playing
mixing
them?
there, just playing.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So I'm starting to learn how to mix records at home in my bedroom then, which, you know, led to a lot of you know, through the youth centre, we're doing a lot of gigs and stuff and that as well. And like one of the bigger gigs that we put on, like back in like 93, was having Death Wish cast come down to the youth centre.
Which would have been the biggest deal of all time.
It's huge.
Yeah.
You know, the guys, you know, they were like, we'd travel to Sydney, you know, every week there was a hip hop show. We'd either jump in a train or get in the car and drive up. And the train sessions were great because you'd have to go, like, get there quite early. You know, it takes like an hour and a half, 2 hours to get on there to Sydney in the train. And then you walk around till the venue opened. Be there, the venue closes at like 1 or 2, and then you're stuck. You're stuck in Sydney till 6 a.m. Waiting for that train. And back then, there was nothing open. Yeah. You know, there were heaps of clubs on Oxford Street to go out and party at. But, you know, we'd go to Kinsella's and other places, and we sort of mope around there and whatever. But, you know, we'd sort of hang out at a cafe and just sit there for hours waiting, you know, just ordering drink after drink or whatever. Or you'd be sitting in the park with, you know, whatever. But so by going to these gigs and always being in the front row, like it was like you went all that way. It's not like you were just going to be sitting out the back and acting cool. And that's where all the graph writers were anyway, that were heavies back then. We'd be up the front just connecting with the rappers and the artists, and getting to know people on a first name basis and all that kind of stuff, and making friends and stuff, and saying, oh, like maybe we can get you guys down to Wollongong for a show, and they'd be, fuck yeah, we'd love to play outside of Sydney, and then we started bringing people down from Sydney to do gigs at the youth centre.
Yeah.
And then eventually
you're selling tickets and that sort of thing?
Like we had Death Wish Cast in 93 to a sellout show, like 350 people.
Have you still got the flyer for that? It'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, somewhere. In a shoebox somewhere. Yeah. Don't ask me to find it straight away. But, and that was the other thing. We were all designing our own flyers.
The DIY ethos.
Yeah.
You've got to do it yourself because no one's going to do it for you.
No one else will do it for you.
Yeah.
So, we're making all these really cool connections with people like that and other crews. And then we bring other groups like Frequency Unknown down and DJs and stuff. And, they'd always be, it's the boys from the Gong, but they fucking loved it, man, because they'd come down. They were living out in, like Western Sydney in the middle of summer. It's just hot. Yeah. And they'd come down to Wollongong for a weekend, and they could go to the beach and stuff. And
it's not like you've got to fly interstate or anything. Like it's definitely manageable to get
there.
Yeah, especially if you've got wheels. It's not far at all.
Hour and a half. Yeah, whatever. Fuck, it was great. So we did all those kinds of shows at the youth centre and stuff.
But at no time you thought, I'm going to move to Sydney? Like, you were happy in Wollongong?
Yeah, that's the thing. I was still happy in Wollongong. I was still happy just to go to Sydney, go record shopping.
Get the fix.
Go to Next Level Records, go to Central Station, especially go to Next Level Records and go see like Fibes and Blaze and that kind of thing, and just sit there for an hour and be like, right, come up from Wollongong, now I'm going to chew your ear off for an hour. I'm going to play every record.
But I'm sure that's come back to get you now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. But, but they'd be like, I could see, at the time, I had no fucking concept that I was just like chewing energy and, like asking questions and wanting to know shit. And, But it was just cool. It was cool hanging out in a record shop then, because dudes would be coming in and out, and you go, oh, that's DJ blah, 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 and that's, that rapper from that crew, and then you meet them, and that's how you made your connections. You weren't on your phone, Instagram. It was like meet and greet.
But even just to learn little tricks about DJing, there's no YouTube, there's no way of learning. You have to watch other people actually do it, see what they're doing. You can't just sort of Google how do you do this. You've got to see it and have someone that's chill enough to teach you or to let you even just watch them.
Yeah.
So, but you didn't want to live there. You thought, no, Sydney's not for me?
Nah, I thought, why live there when I'm so close anyway? So, and I had good things going on in Wollongong. I had a good job. A lot of my family's there, whatever. Like friends, the beach is there. I was still bodyboarding and, I wasn't just a hip hop head, I loved going to the beach and going for a surf in the morning. Yeah. And actually one of the houses I lived in for a few years was literally like 300 meters from the beach. Yeah, so awesome. You could wake up, ride your pushy there, do the surf report, run back, get your gear and go for a surf before work, It was great. So there's a lot of good reasons to stay there. But, as you grow older and, in 99, I went for a bit of a holiday and went to Europe for 6 months, like backpacking. But prior to going there, I'd met this guy in Wollongong who was from Italy called Riccardo. And he just stumbled into the youth centre because he just saw graph pieces and stuff. He's like, hey, man, I'm from Italy. My name's Riccardo. And I go, hey, Riccardo, how you doing? I speak Italian. And he's like, no way. And I'm like, yeah, io parlo italiano puro. Hey, oh. And we just got on really well. And, so I was like, right, man, we're going to show you everything to do with hip hop. We took him to gigs in Sydney.
So he wasn't privy to it at all?
No, he came from Italy to see family in Wollongong. Sorry, I should have said that.
There's obviously a big Italian sort of,
Oh, huge. In Wollongong, there's huge groups of different ethnic minorities at the time. Like Italians, Greeks. There were a lot of Serbian, Croatian. in the 70s, and when all the Vietnamese people came into Australia as well. So there's a strong Vietnamese community there too. So it's that was one of the things about Wollongong, it was very multicultural.
Similar to Melbourne.
Yeah, yeah. And, and everyone sort of had their little villages going on in different suburbs. And, you go, if you lived over there, you're Greek, or Italians lived over there and whatever. So anyway, so Ricky comes from Italy, and we showing him around and whatever. And he loved it, stayed in the Gong and did stuff. And he's like, man, if you ever come to Italy, you got to come to where I live and see how hip-hop is there. And I'm like, yep, I'm coming. I'll come there one day. And then next thing I'm going, mate, I'm actually going to be coming next year. And he goes, sick. So I went to Europe, did the whole, backpack holiday thing. But I went there to see my family in Italy as well. So do the whole pilgrimage, find out the roots of like where my parents are from, and go to the villages they grew up in, and then get your mind blown on all the things that you thought your parents did here in Australia, which you thought were really fucking weird.
Now it makes sense.
Why do they do this and that? And then you go there and you go, oh my God, I get it. They just literally cut out a part of their whole life and brought it here, planted it here, and recreated it in Australia.
Yep.
So it's pretty fucking cool to see that, and finally get that kind of closure on all that stuff.
Yeah, because they seem different to you here from what the norm is, but then you go there and you're like, that makes sense now.
Yeah. So I'm in Italy. I go see Ricardo in his village, and when he's telling me about hip hop, I'm thinking, okay, how big can hip hop be in Italy? And it was fucking huge.
Yeah, I could imagine.
It's massive. Like he lives in a bigger city. It was a port called La Spezia, so in Le Cinque Terre, in that sort of region.
Yep, I've been there, yep.
So all the ships come in from, all over, all the naval ships. There was a base there, like a US naval base and stuff, right? So they're getting all the good shit.
They're getting all the good
records, all the good mixtapes. And it was the first time, because I hadn't been to New York. I hadn't been to New York yet. I still haven't been there, which is such a crime. But I was there, and it's like, and they've had like housing commission, towers and shit. And it's like, fuck, man, this actually feels like this could be a little bit like New York. Like people just hanging out in the basketball courts and shit, just hanging out, and little dudes in Vespers and, pulling up boom boxes, meeting dudes that are 14 that are DJing that are better than me than when I was 24, And the graffiti scene there is insane. This is back in 99, and the train scene's crazy. And Ricky's like, I deliberately went to his village or his town at a certain time when they had their hip hop festival. I said, okay, how big is this going to be? And it was massive. There was like live music happening every day. There were walls getting painted everywhere and that kind of thing. And I met all these writers from everywhere and stuff. So it was really cool.
A real eye-opener, I guess,
real
to how
eye-opener.
Culture works in different places.
Yeah. But then how different things are, but how similar, the things that connect us all, and, love for hip-hop, love for graffiti. It sounds cliched, but these are the things that draw you together, and it doesn't matter where you go around the world. It's that kind of thing that hip-hop and graph can really make you feel at home.
Yeah, and it's interesting how everybody sort of had the same reference points with those movies that you talked about earlier and the magazines, but then each country and city takes their own little spin on it, do you know what I mean? And does it their way, which is kind of really cool as well.
Yeah, exactly. They put their own little style on it, and the lettering style might be really different, or the way in which they rap and that kind of thing. So
And then the way that cool. starts, it influences the younger generations that come up, and that builds the culture within the culture,
Yeah, exactly right. So, you could see like there were kids as young as 14, 12 breaking and doing stuff. And, so with this festival that they had every year, they'd have riders coming in from Switzerland and Germany and other parts of Italy. And through that festival, I was painting there with people, and I meet other writers, and they say, oh, well, when when you're done here, and if you're coming to Switzerland, come see us. And so this holiday, which was supposed to be me just going to see the sights of Europe ended up being like a, all right, well, I'm going to go to Switzerland and hang out with this crew and do that, and then, go do other stuff. So I guess point of story being that I travelled around Europe for 6 months, experienced a lot of stuff, came back to Wollongong and went, right, what am I doing now? Like I've tasted all this stuff and now I want to do something different.
You caught the bug a little bit.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge bug, got me out of my comfort zone, And, I met my partner when I came back to Wollongong. And for a long weekend kind of thing, we said, let's go to Melbourne. Let's go down to Melbourne for a long weekend. And
had you been before?
I've been to Melbourne many a times before that. So my first time in Melbourne, interesting story, is around 92.
Mm-hmm.
I had family living out in Carrum Downs, maybe, Patterson Lakes.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s. So I came down for a family function thing. And because I was studying, I think I had time off, or I just took time off, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I just stayed for almost, I think it could have been 2 weeks. Because I was doing the radio thing with Vox. I was like, and this is where things start to connect, right? So watch, people. Watch what we do here.
Yeah, nothing up my
So
sleeve.
nothing up my sleeve. So by going to these gigs in Sydney, we're also meeting rappers from Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
So we're meeting Reason, Murmur from Intense Quality and stuff, right? Reason's mega cool, right? Easily approachable person. Became friends instantly. He's always like, when you come to Melbourne, let me know. I'll hook you up with people to hang out with. Because I was doing the radio show, I was very aware of Chrissy and PBS,
Mm-hmm.
Step Into the AM.
Yep.
Reading every magazine, Vapors, Zest magazine, all the local graph and hip-hop zines, and just, our network, knowing all these names and stuff. So you'd write a letter to Chrissy and go, hey, do a radio show in Wollongong, coming to Melbourne at this time. And she's like, yeah, cool. Come down. Here's my number. Call me when you get here. Show you around.
Yeah.
So I'm like, sick. I borrowed like a tape recorder, like like with the mic and all that shit when you used to do interviews on on that stuff. And the tapes off the radio station, had to sign it in the book saying I'm taking it for this period. And it's a big deal, They're like, oh, you're going to take this $1,000 piece of recording equipment down to Melbourne.
Don't give it to the hip hop guys. They'll never bring it back.
Yeah, idiots. Nah, it came back in one piece. So I came down with all my clothes, all my shit, camera, and this fucking brown lunchbox looking thing, right? That had a tape deck and a microphone and headphones and stuff. Hooking up with Reason. Reason goes, come hang out with Murmur and do this and that. And I'm like, well, I'm here to do interviews, man. I want to do interviews with you guys. So I'm doing interviews with Murmur, Reason. Chrissy's like, well, you got to meet these guys, Mama's Funk. They're about to drop a 12. I swear they must have it this week. So, Reason's like, okay, you got to meet Nook. Nook's a producer from Intense Quality. Hang out with him, and he goes, yeah, we'll take you to go meet the guys from Mama's Funk, do an interview there. And, they've just released this 12-inch called Funksticles Theory. So, yeah, it must be 92, hey. And so I'm like, man, can I buy this now? And they're like, yeah. I go, can I buy 5-6 copies and bring it home and sell it, to all my mates as well? And they're like, yep. So I'm starting to buy records down here. I'm meeting all these people, doing interviews. And when I'm not hanging out with them, I was just literally catching the train into the city and then going, right, get off at Richmond Station, and I heard about all these suburbs like, you know, Richmond and Burnley and this and that. So I just, on my own, just go walking around, flicking every wall.
There's a lot of
walls,
yeah.
you know, back in '92.
Definitely, yeah.
Around Richmond and Burnley, you know, Swan Street Auctions wall. Famous like walls for me that, you know, they are famous, not just for me, but that I'd only seen a Hype Mag or in Vapors.
Yeah.
And then
also it feels a bit New Yorky there as well with the way that the train's elevated and you know, and Richmond Station, it still hasn't fucking changed.
No, it's a great station, man.
Yeah, it really feels like a home of graffiti, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you know, like walking down and then have to go through and, you know, just walking up Swan Street and stuff, that area. And so I'm in Burnley and I'm taking flicks at Swan Auctions walls and stuff, and just standing there in front of the Paris and Peril piece with the caro with the rings and shit, just standing there, just like mind blown, and you know, walking through the alleyways there and stuff. So Melbourne made an impression on me back then, you know, when I was in my, you know, like prime doing stuff in the Gong. And then I came back maybe a year later with some friends who were in a band. Because I was a youth worker, I had a license to drive a minibus, you know, like to fit 21 kids, and you take them up to Australia's Wonderland for a, you know, holiday activity, all that kind of shit, right? So I'm like with these guys in a band, they're going, man, we're going to go play at the Prince in St Kilda. I'm like, fuck yeah, I'll drive the bus. We'll take one of my other mates, Dino, who's a graph writer, and we'll just go do our graph thing and just do whatever while you guys do your band thing. But we'd obviously go watch them play at night and stuff. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the Melbourne Connect was quite early in '92, and then I always kept in touch with certain people and whatever. So fast forward now back to, I guess, 2000, I'd come with my partner for a long weekend getaway thing, you know, just sort of to come down here and meet a friend who I shared house with called Denny, and he was living in Richmond. So we just come to visit him and just see Melbourne and do stuff. And Denny was like just connected with everyone. He's just, you know, awesome dude. So we like stayed in the city, but we'd meet up with him and he'd take us to places, and then I'd meet other people and whatever. And in that 4 days, we just literally had like fucking an awesome time in Melbourne, you know. Thought it was great. You know, food, culture, arts, everything.
It made more of an impression on you than Sydney sort of did?
Absolutely. Yeah. There was just something about Melbourne is just easier to get around. People are friendlier. No diss to Sydney. But, you know, like, well, literally on the flight home, on the flight back to Sydney, just sitting there going, fuck, that was an awesome weekend. It's like, what are we doing in our lives? Like, why don't we just move to Melbourne? Just, you know, and we're like, yeah, let's do it. So I just made a plan and just saved lots and lots of money, as much money as we could. And then within a year, we moved down to Melbourne, and that was like 2002. Friend Denny was still living in Richmond, so we just crashed on his floor, and we were just like basically looking for an apartment, somewhere to live, and then found somewhere to live, packed all our shit, and came and started living in Melbourne with no job. No prospect. No prospect.
But you've got the youth work thing credentials that you could find something. Is that what the idea is? Is that the game plan?
I got 10 years experience doing community development work.
You can drive a minibus.
Can drive a minibus. You know, maybe some council need me to drive the older people around to their bingo or something. So I had that. You know, my partner worked in sort of like admin kind of stuff and whatever, and we said, fuck it, let's just go, see what happens, you know.
Yep.
So moved down here, and, you know, where do we go from there? So I didn't find a job straight away, but Teresa, like my partner, found a job, started making the money. Me, I'm just like hanging out, you know.
Immersing yourself in the Melbourne
Immersing
culture.
myself in the culture to see how I can get in the scene, maybe find a job, do something. The thing is, I sort of realised that after 10 years of doing youth work and putting my life second to everyone else's needs and helping a lot of young people develop their lives, I had to stop. I did realise I was burnt out, right? So I just stopped doing youth work and just had like a mental health break, I guess, and sort of reset my whole life. So
it's a good spot to do it because you just move cities, you can change, and you can sort of take stock and figure out what the next chapter is, I guess.
Absolutely. And not many people knew me here, so I had to start from the bottom again. You know, like in the Gong, I was like doing a lot of stuff. I was running gigs. I didn't talk about how, running gigs in the local pub and playing hip hop and funk records to a pub rock crowd in between bands and stuff.
Did they get it?
Not at first.
Yep.
But it did take time, and I think, I've heard it a lot on this podcast, and it was that whole thing between the hip hop and the punk skate scene, Beastie Boys.
And they just
right? Beastie Boys just brought everyone together. Mm-hmm. So, I could play Beastie Boys track, and then I could play, some James Brown, or, you'd play the Meters, and then like all the guys, the blues bands that were there, like the dudes would come up and go, "You're all right, Frank.
You're all right." Tick of approval.
You played the Meters. Yeah, fuck. And I go, yeah, man, it's fucking, roots of hip hop, bro,
Yeah.
So, yeah, eventually won people over with that. But that was a brainchild of this guy called Dylan, who was a booking agent, and he had this vision of putting on different bands, but then have DJs in between the bands. And this is like 94, 95.
Which would have been pretty, like...
It was mind-blowing. It was the first time... Myself and two other guys were the first ever DJs to play in a pub in Wollongong, I'd say. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Email me. Say something in the comments below. Subscribe.
So what do we say, 92?
94.
94, yep. Okay.
Yeah. And I had to bring...
What pub was it?
Oxford Tavern.
Oxford Tavern, okay, yeah.
The epicenter of Wollongong's...
Culture.
Yep. And the pub no longer exists, of course.
Sad, really?
Yeah,
it's gone.
Development. Yeah, Wollongong's great for development. And just taking away really significant.
That sucks, man.
But that happens in a lot of regional areas. I don't want to shit on the Gong. It just happens everywhere. Like
Melbourne is better than a lot of places at keeping the pub facade. At least if they are going to fuck it over, they'll keep the facade of the pub and make them build around it, except for some extreme cases they don't. But
yeah, but the inside, the guts is just horrible.
Yeah.
But at least it has that appearance.
You could drive past and still see it and remember that stuff.
And you can remember it. There's no chance I can go to Wollongong and show my kids, oh, this was a pub that we did this at, and where I met your mum, or did that, like whatever.
Yeah, well, that sucks, man.
Yeah. But I guess we're going back and forth a lot.
That's
hey?
all right. Well, we're all right. It's all
so
interesting stuff.
So now we're going to go back to Wollongong for a little bit, because through stuff like that, the skate community and the hip hop community end up having this skate park in Ferry Meadow Skate Park. Mm-hmm. And when that got built, that was like another like cultural meeting place that had like a basketball court with a wall, the back of one of the drop-in walls there. You could paint. So all the graph riders would be there on the weekends painting. The skaters were there skating. Skaters painted as well. Oh, guess what? There's a comp on. And, so-and-so's coming from, some skate team from the States. So the local skate shop, Extreme, there was a guy there working there called Adam. And he'd organise, like, all the comps and stuff. And he was like, Frank, come in, DJ, do this. Get the graph riders doing their thing. So, next thing you know, we're playing at all the skate park jams and all that kind of stuff and just bringing, all this awesome shit happening, So...
And it's pushing the culture to other people that probably, that haven't seen it too much.
Yeah. So, you got all your punk skaters like, oh, come on, man, a bit more Beastie Boys, play some Helmet, play this. And I'm like, yep, no worries. And I'd always make sure I brought those kinds of records too,
Yeah. And you don't have to worry about the clean edits when you're doing those sort of little gigs?
No. Fuck it. We're home free this stage, man. We're just like... Even with Vox, even with community radio, it got to a point where I was like, fuck this, I'm going to run for the board of directors. And I ended up being on the board of directors. I was the youngest person on the board of directors ever, and that was at the age of 22 or something,
Beat them at their own game.
Yeah, I was the first person under 40 there, whatever, I don't know. But, that whole thing of having to play, music without swearing was just out the door. It was just like, it's after 8 p.m, language warning, and then you're on.
Yeah, nice.
So, slowly, these barriers would just get, broken and new things could happen and evolve into better things. So Wollongong was evolving into a great place anyway, and I decided to leave. And come to Melbourne.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is good, though.
But you probably felt that you couldn't... You've achieved a lot there and you needed something else, a new challenge and a new chapter,
Yeah, I needed to do something for myself. Like I said, I needed a reset. I needed to stop doing youth work and that kind of thing. So, swing back to Melbourne. I'm trying to find work. I'm not really finding much work. Probably not looking hard enough.
Having fun?
Having fun. I'm living in Richmond. I'm going to the corner. I'm going to the laundry bar on Monday night. I'm just immersing myself into the hip-hop culture, heavy.
And you can go out every night of the week if you want to. There's always something
Absolutely. On. Yeah. There was always something on. So, I'm doing that. I'm, making mixtapes on my mini disc, chucking them in, putting the headphones on and just riding the train line, looking at all the pieces during the day. Going into Obese Records or Flick Through Records.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As you do, but I'm not buying records because I'm not working.
Yeah.
So
who's working at this stage when you're going in there as a punter?
Strut, Bias.
And these are obviously guys that you're hearing the music and you're walking in there and you're like, yeah, wow,
yeah, man. It's just like, oh, okay, yeah, man, what's up? They're cool. That's their spot. They were kings of the scene. And I just rock up there and. Because I knew Reason, I'd met Bias as well, and we actually, while I was doing that whole transition of moving from Wollongong to Melbourne, I'd met Bias. I think he did a show in Sydney just after he'd launched and dropped Beeswax, and he came up and did a show in Sydney with Reason at somewhere in Newtown, and I can't remember the name of the venue. Probably doesn't exist anymore.
It's apartments.
But yeah, it's apartments, right, or a youth hostel. So I'd met him there, and he was pretty quiet, quite reserved, whatever. But anyway, so I'm trying to find work. I got no money, and I'm harassing the dudes at Obese, just dropping in every couple of days just to check out records and have a chat. And it got to a point where Strut was like, bloody hell, Frank, you hear a lot and you don't buy any records. Why don't you buy some fucking records, mate? And I'm like, well, why don't you give me a fucking job, mate? I didn't say that exactly, but I felt like, oh, Brad, why don't you give me a job? Hey, Brad, I'll work here and then I'll buy records. And he's like, yeah, well, go home and write a resume, mate. And I went, all right. I went home, fired up the computer, got my youth work resume, chopped all the shit out of that, and ran, right, I'm going to write a hip-hop resume. This is what I've been doing since 92.
Yeah, wow.
Right? I came back that afternoon. I didn't fuck around. I came back that afternoon. I went, here you go. Here's my resume, Brad. He just looked at me. He goes, oh, yeah, cool. Thanks. And I'm like, yep, I did it. I handed him my hip-hop resume to Obese Records. Man, I'm going to get a job. Couple of weeks later, I go in there and going, oh, like, how do you feel about starting working here on Saturday? I'm like, oh yeah, I could do that. Yeah, it's just 1 day a week, just 1 day a week. I go, yep, 1 day a week's better than nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously because I'd know Reason and I'd met Pegs.
They've checked you out. They
checked me out,
yeah.
bias. Like I said, I was supposed to say that transition from Wollongong to Sydney, Wollongong moving down to Melbourne. I went back to Wollongong to do one last show with a group I was in called the Argonauts to launch a CD. And for support, I hooked up with Reason and Bias and I said, hey, do you guys want to come up and do support at this show we're doing in Wollongong? And they were like, yeah, hell yeah, we'll do that, because then they got booked for a show in Newcastle. So I booked them for that show in the Gong. We all flew up together at Sydney Airport. They went to Newcastle. We went down to Wollongong. Apparently the time in Newcastle's hectic, because Newcastle's hectic, right? They're awesome people up there, tons, and the whole crew up there, just lots of fun. But when we met them at the train station in Wollongong, brought them out, gave them a hotel room to go chill near the beach, right near the harbour and stuff, and they fucking loved it. So I'd made a bit of a bond with Bias that weekend and stuff. So again, like I put in this resume to Obese. Bias is working there. Reason knows who I am. And it was in that transition stage of being owned by Shaz, moving into the next phase, the Pegs phase.
Yep.
So an opportunity opened up to work Saturday. And I don't know how true it is, but apparently the guy who used to work before me on the Saturday was a bit cheeky and just thought he could, turn up to work stoned and have a spliff out the front and go to work. And they obviously didn't like that. I don't know how true it is, but that's what someone told me. So that opened an opportunity for me. So I started working Saturdays. Sorry, I need a drink.
Yeah, man, have a drink.
Yeah. So I'm working Saturdays, and then it's on. It's like, fuck yeah, I've landed a job at Obese 1 day a week.
Your foot's in the door.
Foot's in the door. And I'm like thinking, well, I've got to do something else. I can't just do this. So I was at RMIT doing a Cert 4 audio course, So I'm doing that kind of stuff, learning about music production, recording, all that kind of thing during the week. Work at Obese on a Saturday, occasionally pick up additional shift here and there. Whole transition phase is happening, and then, Pegs takes over, then that whole thing happens where Strut leaves, things happen, and I'm just this new guy going, oh, what the fuck's going on here, Anyway, so I'm working at Obese. My course was only for a year, so I'd been working there almost a year, and the course was about to end, and I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do now, can't just work here 1 day a week, what's going to happen? Turns out that Obese now is like 2003, 2004.
Pivotal time.
Big things are happening. Hilltop Hoods, Oz hip hop through Triple J, Mass MC, the barbecue song, this, that. Things are starting to blow up. So
even commercial radio's playing a little bit of Aussie pop then, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's crossing over. Hilltop Hoods are getting played on Nova or fucking all the other ones, you know what I mean?
Yeah, not yet, but it was coming.
It was
coming.
Off, yeah.
No, it wasn't far off. Yeah. So this transitional phase, things are starting to happen with Obese, which meant that people that were working on the floor in the retail store weren't going to be available to do that anymore. They had to open up an office and do their orders and that kind of thing. So
the record store and the record label
was starting. So that opened up an opportunity for someone to manage a store. And as it goes, because Bias had been there for a long time, they offered him the job to manage the store. But Bias was predominantly really into his music, still touring, doing all that stuff. He was in his prime, you know, like doing all his music stuff. And he's like, nah, I don't want to do it. I don't think I'll be great at it. How about you offer the job to Frank? Because he's passionate, he really loves it, he talks to the people, he seems interested in what's going on there, and he's not shy, whatever. So I'm about to finish this audio course, thinking, well, what's next? And then I'm sat down in the office and they're going, do you want a full-time job managing the store? What do you say?
Of course.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck yeah. I'm like, sick. So I've fucking moved to Melbourne on a feeling, and this is what's happened, you know, like all these things, you know, and it's not because of right place, right time. It's all these years of stuff that I've done and connection, whatever.
Do you reckon if you fucked the resume that you wouldn't have got the job? Do you reckon if you just had 10 years of driving the bus and putting on these workshops, do you reckon that Strut would have given you the job?
No.
So you reckon that
I don't know, man. I really need to talk to Brad about that stuff. Like, I don't know.
But that is pretty impressive, your take on it, just to go, well, here is my credentials from a hip-hop point of view. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. You know, so it had everything about doing stuff on community radio, making music, putting on gigs, graffiti art workshops, events, you know, the whole package.
Yeah. No, it's a great take on it, man. I'm
like,
impressed.
Cheers. I was impressed. Fuck, I was thinking, like, it sort of made me like, fuck, man, what I've got to do to show these guys? You know, I really want this opportunity, so I did it. So anyway, it turns out I start managing the store. I've come from youth work background, so I've got no retail experience.
You're good at talking to people.
I'm good at talking to people. And something I learned really quickly working at Obese and going to gigs and stuff, and people go, you meet guys, you know, whoever at a gig, and they go, oh, what are you doing here? What do you do? I go, I'm actually working at Obese. I'm the manager. Store manager.
Stamp of approval straight away.
And some dudes are like, oh, yeah, cool. And then other people will be like, what are you doing fucking working there, mate? I'm like, what do you mean? It's Obese Records. It's like the fucking, you know, it's a tits. It's, you know, it's a shit.
Yeah.
And some people were like, nah, man, those dudes are fucking, they're hard cunts, or they're this. They're like rough. They're, you know, like.
And this is within the hip hop community.
This is a community. And then it started to click. I started to learn that I came up in a community, hip hop community, where for the better part, all of us were united under that banner of being hip hop artists and whatever. Like, obviously there were going to be some people you don't get along with, but whatever you did, it was always because of hip hop culture and stuff. I then moved to Melbourne, was doing this stuff. I was starting to realize, oh shit, this is where there's factions, there's different crews. It's a big city. The dudes from the west don't mess with these dudes from over there, or the dudes in the north don't fuck with the dudes over there.
And there's graph beef, and there's all sorts of stuff.
Let's not even.
No, we won't. But
man, that's like, get out the popcorn, you know, like. But then I started realizing that within the music community in Melbourne, there were different, you know, factions and stuff. And you'd go to talk to one guy who's a rapper doing something somewhere. You tell me you're working with them. It's like, oh no, I think I don't want to know you now. Like, you're part of that crew, so see you later.
Yeah. So you felt that it wasn't as not friendly, but it was just a different sort of vibe than what you're used to, and not as welcoming from everybody.
Yeah, it was that, and because, you know, maybe I was just naive and I just had this awesome image of, you know, everyone's into hip hop and we all help each other out. But learned pretty quick that, you know, there's different crews, different factions, and things were split. And then, you know, you just have to accept that. It's like being at school. Not everyone in your year is going to be your mate. There's going to be someone who's your nemesis, someone that you really hate, no matter what.
Someone you don't even get along with
for
no reason.
Yeah. So that's just life. So sooner I learned that, the better. But at the same time, I didn't want to be that person that said, no, I'm with Obese Records, so fuck you, you're cool.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, no, man, like, why don't you like? And, I still had 10 years of youth work experience and embracing problem solving. Yeah.
So you're like, let's fix this.
Hey, how can I fix this? And like, there were dudes that would be like, oh, no, I don't go there because so-and-so's there, or they told me to fuck off, or they hate my music. And I was like, all right, I'm going to be the guy that rebuilds burnt bridges. Because working there, I just felt like, shit, that connection's gone, that's gone.
And there's been a changing of the guard because it's changed hands now as well.
Yeah.
So it is a time that they could start fresh to an extent, I guess.
Yeah. And look, when I say this, I mean no disrespect to anyone before me at Obese, because without them, I'm nothing. And I don't want people to think there's this picture of that, all these people plotting against others, whatever. There's so much love and respect for everyone that came before me. Shaz, and Obi, Ollie. It's just the culture and the scene, like. So here I am. I'm working there, and I'm like, with the perspective of, I'll still treat it like a youth work job, but I'm here to sell records and CDs and apparel and paint. So I'm here to sell stuff and make money, but I'm still here and I'll listen. You're coming in and you've got an issue and whatever, I'm not going to tell you to get fucked. Or, why aren't you buying something, do this and just get out. I'll listen.
Yeah.
Sometimes that works for my advantage, and sometimes it's like, fuck, what have I got myself into?
Yeah. You become a therapist of sorts.
Therapist indeed. Yeah.
But I guess, and some of those people, they might have just been pissed off because they're like, hey, I've got this new fucking CD. Can you stock it? Oh, no, we're not interested. And they're just pissed off, you know what I mean? A bit of that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of, drop it in, we'll have a listen to it and we'll let you know kind of stuff. Because you got to think, there was a lot of stuff coming in.
Yeah, for sure.
And shelf space was a premium, whatever, like.
And of course, you're going to put your mates in the right spots because you're going to look after them. And there's always going to be that sort of stuff. Yeah,
you had the glass cabinet with the counter, and all the local hip hop CDs were in that cabinet, and all the good ones were right at the front for everyone to see. And then the other stuff was sort of a bit further back, and you sort of worked. Artists worked their way to the front.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And now you're full-time there, so you can put your stamp on it a little bit more. Do you have a little bit of freedom to pick what's coming in from certain kind of products and that sort of thing? Or are you just manning the store and trying to keep the peace? And
so at the start, it was obviously with the guidance of Bias, Pegs, and Terry, H2O. And, they were very clear at the start. They're like, for the first few months, we're still ordering stock. You're just going to man the counter, sell the stuff, do this, and this. And I was like, man, I've been buying records for years, man. I want to start buying records. I go, no, we got to show you. You got to learn. So I had to learn, like anyone. So I learned and did my apprenticeship, I guess, in retail and learning how to order stuff and reordering and all that kind of stuff and doing that kind of thing. So that took a while as well before, the keyboard and the reins were like handed over and go, okay, you know what you're doing now. You go order from this person and order that stuff.
But sooner or later, I'm guessing Pegs has got bigger fish to fry when the label starts taking off, and I think he'd probably want to outsource, delegate some other jobs to you.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. The last thing on his mind was having to sit there and go
Reordering
through
CDs.
an Excel file of reordering CDs and shit. He had other things to worry about. Like signing artists, getting their product into JB Hi-Fi and all that kind of thing, and organising tours and all the other stuff that was going on.
Yeah.
So
And I always remember this as a kid going into like Obese, but the tagline "fatter than your mama"
Yeah.
Were you around for the birth of that? Was that before your time?
Oh, that was before. So the actual name Obese Records and Fatter Than Your Mama was already there up on the wall. The stickers were already there. You know, the T-shirts.
You came into something that was already had a cult following.
Yeah,
very heavily, heavily pushed out into the community. That sort of thing.
Yeah. You know, and it was amazing times because it'd be a weekday, and you know, during the week between certain hours, the only people coming through were older people, like older guys and girls that were like either had jobs or didn't have jobs, that were just in there to get their paint or buy their records because they're DJs, and when DJs used to go out and buy records to play. So you'd have these periods where it could be pretty quiet, but it was just irregular faces during the week. But come 3:30, 4 o'clock,
School kids. And
it was like a wave. It was just like 6 kids rocking up. This marker, I want that ink, and da-da-da. And oh, what's the latest mag, and da-da-da-da-da. And then you start meeting all these younger people, like all these kids. So that was like the time we go, oh yeah, you know, check this out, do that. Oh, what'd you see on what line? That, blah, blah, blah. And you start making a rapport with these younger kids, because I sort of like, part of my whole thing was like, okay, you know, that famous line from Bias, like I started off as a toy like everyone else, right? So these kids were toys, but I learned, you know, later on in life especially, but I learned, you know, like, treat them with respect. They're toys, but you don't know if that 14-year-old toy that's coming in today to buy Bias B and, you know, a Reason CD is going to be the next kid that's winning battle raps and is going to be the next big thing.
Yeah, totally. Everyone's got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably, it was an intimidating place for a lot of kids, and that's probably why there was a little bit of a negative stigma, I guess, attached to it, because some people like, oh man, you go in there and they weren't the best at customer service or whatever, you know what I mean? It wasn't a place you went to go and get great customer service, I guess. Kids were probably a little bit sort of...
Yeah, you know, like, it was a different era then, you know?
I always think, because obviously, as we talked about earlier, with the acquiring your supplies, and you've got an actual purpose-built, purpose-made hip-hop shop, are kids still trying to rack shit?
Yeah, there were kids trying to rack shit. Yeah,
really?
You had to be on top of it.
Yeah.
So, and that's, you know, like, these were things, working there is like all these things I learned about placement of products and like, oh, that's anything that's in that corner, I can't see it. So that's a rack zone, you know, like...
The rack zone,
That's the rack zone.
Yeah, wow.
You know, so as things started to grow and Obese as a label was starting to grow and the money was coming in, the shop itself, the layout and everything was looking pretty tired and needed a reno. Like, it got to a point, it's like, man, if we don't do something to make this place look like it's in 08, 09, 10, it's just not going to happen anymore.
And for people that don't know, it's not a very big space.
No, it was a shoebox. It was literally for the value it had culturally, that space didn't represent how big it was as a label and a meeting space. So, you know, myself and other members of the Obese team sort of convinced Tyron to pump in some money and redo the shop and renovate it. And, you know, sort of heavily involved with redesigning the shop and eliminating all the rack zones. And, you know, just giving it, all the blind spots, and, you know, giving it a new feel and you know, sort of, it also created, like, it was a new era. So some of maybe the negative things that could have happened there in the past that, you know, could be forgotten and we can move forward.
And there's some money in it now, obviously, because the label's really kicking off.
Yeah, so, you know, that whole Hilltop Hoods era was bringing in money, you know, like JB had signed up to do distro and all that kind of thing. So there was money coming in and out, and, you know, it went from being, you know, a couple of people working at the shop and, you know, like management in the office, you know, like an admin person and stuff into like growing into a design team and more people. Someone was needed to pack all the orders, and they went from a really small office to something much, much bigger.
And it's putting Aussie hip hop on the map a little bit more as well. So I'm guess people are hearing about this stuff more mainstream, and then they're coming into the shop more. I'm guessing.
Oh, it was crazy. Like normally, say between Thursday through to Monday, it was like, just as I did in early 2000 when I came on a holiday, I came into Obese because that was it. You had to go there. So every week you'd meet people that were in from Tassie, from you know, like Perth, Brisbane, you know, regional Australia, coming in because they wanted to buy a CD or a t-shirt from the shop and get their photo out the front, or you'd let them behind the counter to get a photo with all the records behind them and that kind of stuff.
Get the sticker put on the back of the car.
Sticker on the back of the car. That was my idea.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, man. The vinyl car sticker. I was like, fuck, man.
They were everywhere for a while.
Man.
That's how you knew someone else was into Aussie hip hop when you saw one of those stickers. It was like a beacon.
Yeah, man. It was crazy the amount of stickers that we sold. It was unreal.
And I remember, because at this stage I'm doing some other stuff in my life and I'm not paying attention to what's going on in hip-hop a little bit, but there was a Frankston store for a while, wasn't there?
Yeah, so later on in the piece, what year was that? 2010, 12 maybe?
Yeah.
11? Yeah, so Pegs had decided to open a shop in Frankston. He bought some property out there, so he was able to put a shop in Frankston. And it was going to be sick, you know, but I was pitching the idea of, hey, 2 shops, what if I managed both and I did this, you know, like to expand my role, you know, be like a
area manager.
And he's like, no, you focus on this store. We're going to put Fluey, like Fluent Form, to manage the other store in Frankston, you know. And so they started up there, and by all reports we're getting back then, like Frankston was just that little bit more special, a little bit more colourful than Paran.
Yep.
And the locals, and you know, like we had our fair share of interesting customers, people with special needs, and the rest of it. So, but then, you know, he flew out in Frankston. I think he put up with a lot, and he was from out that way anyway, so he already knew what was going on. So Tyrion made the right move, but the store out there didn't really last for too long.
Yeah, it didn't stand a chance, you think, just because of the
I actually think it was ahead of its. It was too early, you know. But yeah, it's just a different time then. But yeah, it just didn't work to the extent they wanted to. And I think too, what happened was starting to move into the digital age as well. You know, Serato had come in.
Yep.
MP3s, iTunes, so CDs. Out. DJs weren't coming in to buy their 12s and their records anymore. DJs were like fucking selling everything. Yeah. Their whole collections were going to like Dixon's and that kind of thing, you know.
Everything was digitized, yeah.
Yeah.
But from a DJ point of view, it was a good time because you could get that visual look and the same feel of the vinyl with the DVS, the digital vinyl stuff.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So from, you know, instead of carrying boxes of records around, you've got your laptop and your fucking Serato box and your aux cords and you're good to go.
Yeah, man.
But I guess it's not good for retail.
No, it wasn't great for retail, especially the whole, you know, demise of CD. You know, a lot of CDs were being sold, not only at Obese, but everywhere, right? So that whole thing sort of shifted things, and I think that's sort of that was sort of the start of, you know, the whole online thing and whatever, and I think to survive you'd have to change your whole business model to accommodate where music was going and purchasing music and all that kind of thing. So
You got it. Yeah, you have to change to, I guess, from what the products you've got. Then paint and art supplies are the big one, I guess. But then people can still order that online, which kind of you're kind of combating against that as well to an extent.
Because you're right, because you're talking about online stores popping up, being able to buy apparel online, being able to buy all your apparel from overseas that you could never get locally and that kind of thing. So things were starting to get a bit shaky.
Yeah, but the reason why I think a lot of people went to Obese is because they were getting things and products and other stores similar to that in other states and cities, because you were getting things that were small run and were made by the artists themselves. You know what I mean? You were getting tees that were printed on Fruit of the Loom t-shirts. You know what I mean? You were getting a CD that it's essentially a bootleg. Like they haven't gone to the proper pressing. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. And that's why I think people were going to that. And you're not back then. The individual artists probably didn't have their own websites. You know?
Yeah, you're right. And I don't think Bandcamp was around as yet.
Just not quite. Yeah.
Not yet. So it's almost like stores like Obese were sort of regressing back to just being about the independent artists, the independent clothing brands, the DIY guys doing their mags and stuff, having that as the point, and people would come in for that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's almost like it was starting to shrink.
Well, it's like
downsize.
Hip hop shops are very similar to skate shops with you goes in waves. Like skate shops can be, in the space of 2 years can go from being a huge thing where everyone's into skating and then something happens and then the popularity drops off. And I feel like hip hop shops are a bit like that as well. It goes in sort of waves. And
because there used to be like, I was never like a big time into skating, but a lot of my friends were. So, we go to the hip hop shops, we go to the skate shop. I noticed in Melbourne there were like skate shops in almost every shopping centre, mall kind of thing. There were shops everywhere, right? But I'm sure it's not like that anymore.
Nah,
right?
every high street sort of had a skate shop within reason. You know what I mean? Like there was a lot around, and they don't exist. Again, people buying them online and that sort of thing. But I think skateboarding goes through waves of popularity, like any sort of thing. Yeah, where it goes from being really popular to not so popular. And I see that the hip-hop sort of stores, similar to that, you're always going to have your core audience that are going to want to buy paint and records, but whether it is having a time, where kids are fucking all about it, or whether it's a time where it's not as favourable. Yeah. And so
it's just part of the cycle for all subcultural kind of things.
Totally,
right?
Yeah.
It would be their popularity in a retail store, or their music, or skateboard, like that thing in that lifestyle. Like, I'm not sure if the popularity of what we used to lovingly call Oz hip hop, if that popularity will ever exist again. And for several reasons, but one that I feel, which is quite a positive thing now with hip hop in Australia, is that whereas everything used to be in one lane, and things that weren't in that lane were just these little side streets that were getting no love or no attention. Like if you weren't in that main freeway, you just weren't a part of it. Whereas now there's multiple lanes, things are branched off, and there's room for all these different diverse styles to exist, coexist, if you want to say that. But all these different subgenres of hip hop in Australia, are all going through different stages of popularity, like, so whatever's super popular now that sort of references the grime stuff or drill stuff in the UK and that kind of stuff might be super popular now, but in 2 years, 3 years, it might phase out. It might not. People always said when we were growing up, hip hop, it's just a fad. You'll get over it, mate. 30 years later, it's still here, so
and
I don't want to
arguably stronger.
dismiss. Yeah, and it's stronger.
Yeah.
But, I feel like the hip-hop that we grew up on, independent stuff, has really become underground again. And I think a lot of artists that make that music are pretty... I can't speak on everyone, but I think a lot of artists are quite happy and comfortable with the fact that it's gone back to that underground level. Although I think there'd be rappers that go, fuck, I wish I could play a venue and fill out 800 people, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, now you're doing shows, you might get 200 people, but at least that's 200 dedicated fans. So...
And it can change quickly, you know? Like, the couple of hundred people can turn... Say, Hilltop, they went from a couple of hundred at the corner, you know, 5 years later, you know, 5,000, 6,000, 7, you know? Like, so, look, the thing is now, there's enough avenues to put your music out there. If it's good and if it strikes a chord with people, then I think, you know... And success depends on how you measure popularity and success.
Yeah, and I know, like, don't want to talk too much about being on social media and likes and pumping your stuff that way, but, you know, I feel that good music is always going to reach the ears of people that are interested in it, because the thing we still have is your peers, your friendship groups, your local community radio stations. You know, you still have that core base foundation still exists. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It hasn't gone away. It's been there since day one, and it's stayed there. And, you know, it's up to the listener to go out and go, right, well, I'm going to listen to PBS because I know there's a mad hip-hop show on a Monday night, you know, called Hippopotamus Rex. It's been around for like nearly 19 years, you know what I mean?
And that was in my notes, definitely, and you do it still sporadically, and you fill in when you can, but you've been a staple on that show for quite a while.
Yeah. Stupidly, Ronan allowed me to come on board. Nah, I say that. Nah. It is such an honour to be a part of that because, you know, growing up and being on Vox and knowing of PBS, stepping to the AM, hitting switches, and to be asked to be a part of that crew and be able to play music on that show is a big thing for me. So, you know, so now when I do it, because through COVID and whatever, a lot of things stopped. But I remember one thing, having to do a show once when COVID was on, and it was the weirdest thing. Ronan couldn't do it. It was a last minute fill-in. I had to, before I left the house that night, I had to print out a form. It's when we were in lockdown, you weren't allowed, you had curfews. Remember we had curfews?
8 o'clock, I think it was.
Fucking hell. So the show started at 8 and went till 10. So I had to drive into Collingwood, you know, about 7:30. So I had to have a printout letter saying where I was going, why I was there, and what time I'd be home. And I thought, man, this is really messed up. But then, like, because of that, I went in there and I got to play music for 2 hours for everyone that was stuck at home, man. It felt so good.
Yeah, what a privilege.
You know, like such a privilege, you know. So, so whenever Ronan asks me to jump in, I'll jump in, man. And
it's awesome because you get to play exactly what you want to play, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's still the same music philosophy I had in 93. Yeah. I'm playing music that I love, that's hip-hop, you know, that I feel that people need to hear, and if they're in that lane, hopefully it connects with them, you know. And so, yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, man, and how long's that show been going for? A long time.
I think it hits 19 years this year.
Wow, and that's got to be probably the longest running consistent show on like that radio on PBS, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, it'd be in the top.
Yeah,
there'd be a few, I reckon, but
20-year anniversary next year.
Yeah, we'll do something for that for sure.
So let's just go back to Obese for a bit. So then things are starting to get. There's the Aussie hip hop things going bananas. The shop's going through some changes, and then, from my memory, it moves to Commercial Road, the Is It Street shop.
Yeah.
And it'd been there for how long before that? 25 years or something.
Yeah, something like that. Because they did that whole, I think it was Obese City 2 compilation. Mm-hmm. It's like celebrating 25 years of Obese Records. I remember the poster, like the artwork, and there was a big 25 in the middle. So the whole move to Commercial Road.
Was it the old DMC shop?
Old DMC shop. Such a trip to be moving into that shop, right? But I'm not sure how much I should speak on it because it was Tyrion's dream to consolidate, the distribution centre, the retail store, and the offices all in one building. And that's where it was going to happen. So everything moved there. Something went wrong with the planning and stuff, so they couldn't do something to make the retail space just this one long shop. They had to keep...
You walked in, there's a bit at the back there,
Yeah.
another little room I remember.
Yeah, so what happened, there was like a stairwell in the middle of the two rooms that they were going to knock out and then put a stairwell at the back, like in the back, like storeroom to go upstairs. But
that's
something...
That's a proper rack zone when it's another room.
Man, hard.
Yeah.
So that, for some reason, some technical reason, it didn't happen. So
we'll blame Stonington planning.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's always the council. You're correct. You're well versed in these things, obviously. So the move to Commercial Road had like all your paint and apparel in the front, and then all your records, CDs in the back section.
You're not putting the paint in the rack section.
No way. So as that's changing, I'm starting to get a bit tired. Been there almost 10 years. Coming up to 10 years, and doing my thing, coming up with ideas, suggestions, putting these ideas in, forward, and just being told, no, don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. Just keep doing your job. Keep doing your job.
Because the other thing's going bananas.
Other things are going off.
So you're just you man the store and just keep
man the
that
store,
ticket
do your
over.
thing.
Yeah. Don't think outside
you're getting
the
paid
box.
every fortnight. It's dope. Just keep doing your thing. Mind you, like when people in the office were going on holidays, I'd shift and go from the store and be the person doing all the orders and the packing, and so I was learning all that stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
Processing all the online orders, all the orders for JB Hi-Fi. And it was just blowing my mind, this whole process of doing all this shit and how complex it was. So at least I was still learning new things as well. But anyway, so maybe it was coming to this cycle. It was like 10 years of being there. Things had changed once it moved to Commercial Road. That mecca, that iconic spot on Izette Street that used to get the summer afternoon sun. You're next door to Babel Cafe. You'd poke your head over, you'd grab a coffee, you'd grab lunch. At a period, I had friends working in the kitchen there at Babel. So it'd be like, hey, Denny, can you just like blah, 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 make us this? And, they'd bring it over and you'd have lunch. And it was a really good little community vibe happening there. So then you move to Commercial Road, and it was like, oh, don't feel like we're in Paran anymore. We're technically in South Yarra.
Yeah, but for the people that don't know, it's about 150 metres away geographically.
Yeah.
it's not
like
far.
At the other side of the car park in the Coles, right?
It's not far away, but I totally get that. And as somebody who's spent a lot of my life on Chapel, you cross Malvern Road, Commercial Road, it feels different.
Yeah.
Well,
and things like High Street, Malvern Road, they're turning, they're like borderlines, like you cross High Street from Paran and you become Windsor. Windsor's always like this, like, been in the area for like 10 years and stuff. It was like Windsor was always like the poor cousin of Chapel Streets, where all the cheap bars and, like the more non-gentrified area of Chapel Street.
And it's funny because for people that aren't that familiar with Chapel Street, we call it Chapel Street, like Chapel, but it is 4 different suburbs. It's like St Kilda, right? Then you've got Windsor, then you've got Paran, then you've got South Yarra.
Yeah.
And they're all different, but we sort of go, yeah, it's Chapel Street, but they're all different parts of fucking Chapel Street.
Yeah. So it's almost like 4 different communities.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, go visit the other people in the village of Paran.
Down there. Or, it does sort of all feel like different. And I've been someone who mostly gravitates towards Windsor side personally, but
Yeah.
everyone kind of had their sort of space. But I can see how moving there, it kind of would feel different.
Yeah, it was really different. It was it just didn't. Maybe like some people, I'm not really good with change. And when you're so used to doing something in a routine and then it flips like that, it was just like, oh, I'm not feeling this, hey.
Yeah.
And the whole thing at Obese, things were changing. You could feel the energy just wasn't the same anymore, like artists had left the label, before us moving there, right? So Hilltops had left. Funk Wars, Draft, Bliss and SO left a long time ago. So everyone knows the history, right? So, all the new artists are coming through. So it just didn't have the same vibe. So I was like, how do I say this? Within Obese itself, everyone who worked there had a feeling and knew that at some point it was going to end.
They're probably stunned it lasted that long
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a long time, 30 years
man.
or whatever,
Yeah. And, the period in which Pegs owned it as well was quite a significant chunk of that. And he worked through a whole lot of stuff. The whole team, everyone that worked there, because it was more than, he was obviously the mastermind, like very smart man who planned all these things and had really good people come and work with him to make things happen. But all of us, a lot of people, we had this vibe, man, that it was just not going to keep going. So only speaking on my own experience, I was like, well, I got this vibe, this ain't going to be happening for much longer. So what do? I've got family, I've got kids. I've got to think about something about my future and my family and what, what's the next step. I don't want to be on the back foot at the age that I'm at with 2 kids that are almost, like not teenagers yet, but, in primary school doing their things. And I'm thinking, man, as they grow up, they're going to need stuff, man.
They're going to need things.
Oh, boy, they need stuff. So I'm thinking, fuck, do I just go out and do my own thing? So I sat down and talked to like my partner again and go, man, I think I need to do this. I think I need to start my own business, with everything I've learned over the last 10 years, connections I've made, the people I've become friends with in the industry and whatever else, and take that, and with all the ideas that got knocked back at that place and just kept them all and say, I'm going to do this thing. And it was like, all right, how do I do this? And I was like, well, fuck, I've been there for 10 years. I'm going to get long service leave for a while. So ended up resigning, taking my long service leave. And it sort of hit people there, I think, like pretty heavy, like, oh, what do you mean you're going? I'm like, yeah, I'm out. And everyone sort of like kind of knew. They had this feeling,
Yeah.
So I told Tyron, and he's like, I could see the look in his eye, but he goes, man, all right, all the best. I wish you all the best. You got to do what's right for you. And I walk out of his office and went, fuck, can't believe I just told him I'm quitting, I'd got down the hallway and he calls me back. He goes, oh, hey, Frank, come back. I'm like, yeah, what? He goes, promise me you don't open a shop in the next year. And I just looked at him. I'm like in my head going, fuck, he knows what I'm going to do.
Well, he would have had an inkling.
Of course, he's smart, man. He's like, I respect the man, like I really do.
You also wouldn't just go open up a shop next door. Do you know what I mean?
No, I'd open in the next neighbourhood.
But,
Yeah, but that wasn't anyway. So I looked at him and he goes, promise me you don't in the next year open a shop. I go, no, I won't. I keep my word. And I shook hands with him, looked him in the eye, shook hands. I said, I won't do that. So finished the work, had a mad party, whatever, and then had a break again, another reset. It's like history repeats, you know, like did my youth, bang, another
Seems to
one.
be 10-year cycles for you.
Yeah. So I'm now like thinking, well, fuck, how do I start my own business? I never went to business school. I don't know anything. I know how to run a shop. So I just sat there and then I just started researching, you know, property, this, that, business stuff, accounting, all this other stuff, and started looking for a space and all that kind of stuff. And real estate at the time, it was just really hard to find a shop. And because I'd lived and worked in that general area the whole time I'd been in Melbourne, you know, growing up, so like living in Richmond, always hanging out in Paran, Windsor, you know, like going to the city and whatever. I thought, fuck, this feels like home now, you know, this is my home. So I was like, well, Obese is on Commercial Road down in South Yarra. This area called Windsor looks fucking dope. It's still got a vibe about it, you know. So I was always looking around there trying to get a shop. Just getting knocked back, one after the other, knocked back.
Well, you're going for the lease just because of the quality, because of what you were going to do there, because you'd say...
Yeah, because I looked at the area and I thought, man, Revolver's just down there. You know, I had this vision that not only did I want to run a shop, I wanted to put on gigs. Revs is a mad spot to do gigs.
Yep.
It was at the time, right? And I knew too that working in Paran, there was this weird thing. Again, it's this division that I worked in Paran that whole 10 years. I never crossed High Street.
Really?
During the day to go do stuff. I just stayed on that side.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, that's enough of a barrier to say, well, you're down there, I'm going to go on the other side of this street up here.
Did Pegs get word that you were looking around that area?
No. This was all like, you know, he was still running the business. They were doing all their shit. I'm out of there and I'm just working on a plan. And this plan took it took more than a year before the doors opened. So I kept my word.
Yep.
And yeah, so I was just looking for spots in that area. I was also looking out, like, you know, there were other shops in like Collingwood, Fitzroy area, so I wasn't going to go there. You know, I didn't want to go out west or north because I just did not know the spot. And there was Giant was out north anyway. So
yeah, it was north.
You know.
There, yeah. All right, well, we've got a beer now, so things have gone up a notch. Cheers.
Prost.
So the 12 months is gone by. You've come good.
Well,
on your...
I've come good on my part of the deal. You know, that's the thing. It's always been for me, honesty and loyalty. You know, like yeah.
If he had said 3 years,
I would have had to have said something.
Yeah, 12 months.
I
was
think
okay.
he said 12 months with the reality, knowing that I was going to go off and do something like. How could you not? 10 years of managing a store, all that skill set, all the connections. How could you not go off and do something slightly related to that, right?
And their stores survived without you.
Yep.
For how long?
Okay, so in September 2015, I finally got a lease, like penned and signed, keys in my hands. But even getting that spot was weird because I was sort of asking this one guy, his name's Chris, and he had like a shop on Chapel Street and some studio spaces in the neighbourhood. And I thought, fuck, you got studios. Maybe I can set up a shop in your cool studio space. And he's like, no. And he goes, look, the lady over there in that vintage store had enough and she's moving on, but the lease hasn't come up yet. And he's like, you should go in there and talk to her about it and see if you can meet the landlord. So I'm walking into this vintage store. I don't know if you remember Tiger Moon Traders, which was next door to La La Land, right? Yeah. So it was this like awesome old school vintage store that had stuff everywhere. And it was just like jam-packed, and there was like little walkways to get through to go to spots and dig for stuff. Lovely lady running it was named Julie. And I'd come in and go, hey, I heard through Chris that you might be leaving. And, you know, store's coming up for lease. And you know, sort of gathered pretty quick that something was going on. She wasn't 100% in the best of places, and something was going on in her life, and that's why she was closing the shop. And she, you know, eventually like said, yeah, come back, I'll let you know who the landlord is, because she lives upstairs anyway, and I'll introduce you, or let her know. I said, here's my details and stuff. Anyway, before the shop even was put on the market, I'd shown expressions of interest and talked to the landlord, and they said, you know what, yep, penned a deal, September 2015, keys in my hand. Miraculously, Julie had cleaned out the shop, and I mean, like, this place was like a hoarder's paradise, and it was full on. So
And it looked a lot bigger when it was empty?
Yeah. I was like, fuck, what have I done?
But you're still paying the same thing as you signed, but now you got more space.
Yeah. It was huge.
Was it daunting though, knowing that you had to make this work now?
Yeah. I was shit myself, man. I was just like, fuck. And I was naive too. I was like, yeah, I'm going to make this happen. But, you know, then 10
years of retail experience.
Yeah.
But now it's different when your ass
when
is
the
on
keys
the
are in
line.
my hand and I've signed my life away and got a loan from the bank and done big man ting, you know, like it was on. I literally sat there with the keys, sat on a milk crate towards the front of the door and just looked into the shop for like 20 minutes, just sitting there going, right, design your shop now. And just like, you know, and I did everything, you know, like...
With no rack zones.
Yeah, no rack zones, man. No racks. There's no mirrors on the table, no racks anywhere.
No rack. No.
So that's a Chapel Street joke right there, if you ever heard one. So yeah, for that whole period, I was like designing things on Pinterest. I'm looking at what trends were in shop fitting and this and that. I even looked at maybe opening a shop in like a shopping centre kind of mall thing.
Yeah.
And then learnt pretty quick, like, nah, I don't know why anyone opens a shop in one of those mall things, man. They take over your life, you know. They dictate everything.
They tell you what tiles you have to use and everything. Yeah. Like, it's very specific.
It's full on. So anyway, so I'm designing the floor space, what's going to go in the storeroom, how the racks are going to be, drawing it up. In the meantime, while I'm doing that, a friend of mine, Steve, who owned a tattoo studio in Brunswick at the time off Sydney Road called Corpus Tattoo, had some staff members going on holiday. So one of the girls at the front desk was going on leave for a while, and he goes, mate, you'll be perfect. Just come in, be the door bitch at the tattoo studio for like 2 weeks or something. So I'll be doing that while I'm doing all this other stuff. He goes, I don't mind you being on the computer and doing your shit. Yeah. But, you know, when people come in, you know, meet and greet, you know, you're that person on the door. So this guy comes in and he owns he's a carpenter / you know, steel worker, works with steel, wood, the whole thing. And I was talking to him and he's like, used to be in a graph when he was a kid. And I said, I'm going to open up this shop. And I got these cabinets that I want to make and this and that. Because, you know, like I looked at all this stuff online that's prefab stuff and just all looks shit. You know, melamine and just chipboard rubbish. You know, it looked like it came out of IKEA. And I go, this is my vision. I got all these cabinets and stuff. And he goes, leave it with me. And then he's doing like CAD drawings of all this stuff and making everything come to life with the cabinets and the paint wall. Yeah. You know, because I had this vision, like at the time, there was no shop in Australia that had their paint sitting with the donuts facing. So you didn't see the whole can. You're just looking at the colour on the donut.
So you got way more surface area to display.
You've got
more,
yeah. Like it goes deeper, but you got more surface area that way. And I said, and I was obviously looking at inspiration to Europe, like because Europe graffiti's huge there. So it's not like I was doing anything new, but it was new in Australia, right?
Yep.
So he worked out this mad system for the paint racks. He's like, oh, we'll make them out of steel, and then your cabinets will have steel in the cabinets, so it's like train tracks, and like dope. So, another situation pops up where things just fall into place. Anyway, 3 months of renovating. Like anyone that's renovated a house, a shop, something, there's always disasters.
Do you have a rent-free period here?
I think I had 3 months rent-free.
Right.
And
So
that's
after
pretty
that,
much
you got to be ready to fucking
I got to
hit
be
the road.
ready to go.
Yeah.
And I had like a major fucking hurdle that I learnt that if you need a builder around the time of the Melbourne Cup, you're not getting one.
Like the day before, you're not going to get him
The week leading
carnival.
up and the week later after, you cannot get a tradie to come and do shit. The guys that I was working with anyway, because they're all connected to the building industry and they're all off at the races. They're not answering their phone. They don't give a shit about me and my pissy little shop. So that was like a 2-week cease of work. And then I had another major drama that I don't want to talk about because I'll probably curl up into a ball and cry.
We'll leave that out.
Because I'll say this, man, I actually had a mental breakdown at one point.
Wow.
And it was fucked.
Yeah.
Like I'd never experienced that in my life, but I had a mental breakdown.
Because you had a lot of weight on your shoulders.
A lot of weight on my shoulders, and I'm sure there's people that have been a part of building a house or starting up businesses where shit just goes south and I just had to pick myself up and keep going, because it was just me, with the support of my partner. But it's not like I had a business partner, an advisor, nothing. It was just...
You've got no money person just to prop you up with more cash in case things go awry. That's, yeah.
No, I had friends I could talk to, but, it literally close to opening, I had a breakdown and it nearly fucked me for a week. But I just got back up and just kept going because it had to happen. I had to prove to myself I could do this. Anyway, so we finally get to December. The shop should have been open in early November, but it didn't open until the 19th of December. That's how much of a delay there was with all the shit going on with the refit. And then the week of opening, I think one of the reasons why I had a breakdown is that the company that was delivering me the product to put in the shelves, like the paints, it's getting close to Christmas. They decided that the X amount of pallets of paint I needed on opening day to be in the shop to make it have an impact with this full wall of colour. So when people walked in, they just like go, fuck me, what is this place? They decided that they weren't going to deliver my products in time for opening. So I had that whole paint rack, as you've seen in the shop. 80% of it was empty.
But you've obviously got a good relationship with these people. You've been working with them previously.
Oh no, well,
yes
no, hang on. So so one of my paint suppliers, Montana Cans Australia, that was a new relationship.
Yep.
So I'd worked with Ironlac through Obese for years and maintained a good relationship with them. So they were in 100%. And then I had to make a decision about what European line of paint I'd stock. And I just had this gut feeling about going with Montana Cans, not MTN. I don't want to get political. I don't want writers going, oh, fuck them. They're the real dudes. They're the fake dudes. It's like, I don't give a shit. But I just had this gut feeling, Montana Cans over MTN. And thank God I did. It's fucking best paint. in my opinion.
In your opinion. And you've got a
So-
great relationship with them now. You're always
Yeah,
sort
yeah.
of...
With a distributor, with Saman, it's fantastic, man. He's very open. We talk a lot. If there's an issue, he lets me know before it becomes an issue. You know, it's the best way to run business. But the problem wasn't him. He had loaded all the paint onto pallets, put it on the truck, and it was sitting in Melbourne in a warehouse, just sitting there, not being prioritised to move because West Farmers, Coles, Myer, blah, 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 they need all their pallets before Christmas. So anyway, so yeah, that was probably part of it. But so open day, we open up. There's like, it's a massive space. There's only three rows of records, 2 clothing racks with T-shirts on it, and this amazing paint rack with only 20% of the stock in there.
And you got to explain to people, it's going to be...
It's like this whole thing's going to be full of paint.
Paint,
Come
yeah.
back next week. Anyway, we opened up. It was like a 38-degree day, and it just felt awesome. And then, 2 guys walk in, and they're like, "Hey, Frankie, yeah, sick, good on you, mate. You've opened up a shop." I go, "What are you guys doing?" "Oh, we've just come from this new paint shop that opened up around the corner today." I went, what the fuck? What? Some dude had opened a paint shop on Bang Street around the corner in Paran.
Yeah, actually, I know that guy.
So-
and I forgot about that, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, fuck, is this karma? Is this like a plot to destroy
Yeah, so that was
my...
a cafe / paint shop.
Yeah.
And, yeah. I've known that guy for a long time. I don't know what he's doing now, but yeah, I forgot all about that, man. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so...
He's not there anymore.
Yeah, we all know that. So that was just like fucking piss on my parade kind of thing, like 8 months of working, planning to build this shop and start, and this is like smack in the face. Lesson number 1 in business is that there's always going to be competition.
Well, yeah.
And I thought, I'm being a bit of a prick opening up a shop in competition with Obese, who are, like 1 kilometre that way, but then this guy's opened up between both of us.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was game on from day one,
Yeah.
and then we just started building from there,
Yeah. And, like anything, there's territories, but there's not, like with the whole tattoo thing, people are like, well, you can't open up here and you can't open up there. But at the end of the day, people can open up wherever they want to, but at the end, you'd like to think that you've planned everything and it's going to go to plan and you're going to be, well, you've had the last laugh, you're still standing.
I am, yep. 8 years in September like last week was the 8-year anniversary of getting the keys, and December 19 this year will be 8 years of it being open. So,
Man, you should be really
it's pretty
proud.
cool. Yeah, I am. Thanks.
I also have to ask, where does the name come from?
So one of the locations we were looking at was this small little shop across the road from the Union Hotel on Chapel.
Yep.
So you got the Union Hotel,
Yeah.
you got Union
Street.
Street,
Yep.
and it was one of these little shops just in between Union Street and the post office.
Yep. Yeah.
So again,
There's like a little op shop there.
yeah, there's an op shop, and
yeah.
now there's like a few little like hairdresser kind of
things,
places,
yeah.
and a smoke shop and a
Yeah.
ladies' fashion store. So I was dead bent that I was going to get this mad little shop that was like tiny shoebox, which would have been okay. I would have made something work there. So I again met with my friend Steve and showed him the spot, and we were having lunch at Yellowbird in one of the booths there, having a chat and sort of trying to work, and I'm like, fuck man, I still don't have a name. I don't have a name. You can't call it Fat Cat Wrap Shop, or something, or like had to be something. And he was like, oh man, like, why don't you call it like Union Heights? I'm like, whoa, what? I go, that's fucking awesome, like. He goes, yeah, because it's got Union Streets there and the Union Hotel is across the road. But Union Heights is like, you know, your next level. You're taking it to another level, you know, like you're a union, you're fucking bringing everyone together, taking it to a higher level. You know, and it sort of sounds like it's something out in New York, like a train station or whatever.
It sounds like it could be like a housing project even.
Yeah. You know, like you had the something Heights, like, you know. And I was like, man, done. Wrote it down in my book. I had this book that was like thick, full of all the ideas, concepts, everything. So I kept this book. It's great. Good to look back at every now and then.
That's why I'm doing this book.
Yeah, man. Yeah, exactly. So that name stuck. I didn't get that shop across the road from the Union.
Which worked out in your favour because you couldn't do in-stores in a tiny little
man, it was smaller than... Like, it was narrow. You were literally going to fit a paint rack and a cabinet, and that was it. So, you know,
and I'm guessing the rent wouldn't have been that much different either. Anywhere on Channel Street's fucking
the rent would have been dope. Like, it was like fucking not even a third of what I'm paying now, you know?
Yeah.
But it's not even... It was like a fifth of what I've got now, space-wise. So, yeah, that's how we come up with the name, thanks to Steve.
Because I was trying to have a look. I'm like, where is actual Union Heights? I'm seeing if it came from one, and I couldn't find anything, which, from a marketing perspective, it's really, really good.
Yeah.
Because if you Google it, you're bang, 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 because there's not really a Union Heights. If you named it Sedgwick Avenue or something, you Google that, it's never going to come up, you know?
No. So, yeah, that was the thing. I was Googling because I was doing a lot of research on what already existed, and you didn't want to copy something too much, you know?
And you don't want to be too, like you said, you know, too cliche and, you know, fat cans or whatever it was. You know, like,
super fat cap spray shop. Dope.
Yeah.
Fresh.
Da dope shop.
Da bomb shop.
Yeah.
Rocker.
Yeah, exactly.
Pop. Sorry, you know, but yeah, I love having a bit of fun.
Yeah.
But so that was the name, and that's how it stuck. So.
And obviously, like I just mentioned, you do in stores. Like you had one on Saturday. You have people coming in. They'll DJ. They'll rap. You'll have all sorts of stuff, which you obviously couldn't have in a smaller shop. But it must be sick to seeing people come in and use that space as like a more of a creative sort of spot.
Yeah. We sort of tended to. There was a few things in my lease agreement that sort of made things tricky, but things are changing. And so we sort of focused once a year on doing Record Store Day as the event where everyone came in for a whole day, DJs, live artists, do their thing, you know, and stuff. So, but now, hopefully we'll do more of that, but on a small scale. Everything doesn't have to be big, right? It can just be like for an hour on a Saturday arvo, people come in, do their thing, go out and go for a drink up the road, whatever. So yeah, but it's good having that space, you know, like.
And even like you had the Bury Me in Denim, you know, show and that sort of
thing.
Yeah,
man.
So stuff like that is awesome. That you know you can do these even like sort of mini gallery type scenarios, you know.
Yeah. Again, I sort of hold off and make sure it's going to be something special that's not just like a standard art exhibition. And that was through Mark Lording and the crew out that way.
Yeah, Mark, I get tattooed from him pretty regularly. And he's a good dude. And he was telling me
100%, man.
He was telling me about that exhibition the other day, and he's saying that he did it was about 7 years ago.
Yeah, it was real early now, so probably 7 years ago. Yeah, it was such a good event, man. Like, I remember standing on the counter, you know, doing the raffle and just looking around and going, "Fuck, this is amazing." You know, like such a supportive community and good people, you know.
Yeah, and obviously you do those sort of things to support the scene, but you'd hope it translates into sales and stuff as well, or just putting you on the map a little bit.
Yeah. Look. It's end of the day. It's a business. I got rent to pay. I got to pay insurance. Got to pay staff.
A lot of overheads. People don't realise that about starting a business. You know, so especially when you got to pay rent. Like, you know, if you've got a business that you could run without paying rent. If you've got,
Oh.
if you know, that'd be the
How
dream.
good would that be?
Mm.
If you could actually buy the building you're
Just
in, and
yeah,
you know, then I'd be paying off a mortgage, really, but
or even
it's
just
still better. But
yeah,
still,
so
I know what you mean, though.
that is tough. So
yeah,
it's always going to be a bit of a grind. But obviously, you've got a lot of people that come in, your regulars, and they come in and buy paint. And I guess it brings me back to when you said you were being a pain in the ass in the record stores back in the early days. You must get some heads that come in and you're like, I'm getting my bad karma for being that annoying kid at the record store.
Yep. It's all come full circle.
Full circle.
I used to get it at Obese, and I still kind of get it. You know, like,
It's part of it, though.
it is part of it. You know, like you walk into the shop, you know, you got that little loungy kind of Chesterfield little
Yep.
thing there. That's there for a reason. That's where people take a load off, have a seat, have a chat. You know, come in. If my door's open and you can't do that in my shop anymore, what's the fucking point? You know,
Yeah.
that's one of the many reasons why I do what I do.
Totally. I'm
You
always
know?
mindful when I come in, though. I'll have a chat for 10 minutes. I'm not going to break your balls all the time. I'm like, oh, man.
Yeah,
I'll
I
get
think
out
I
of here.
try to keep you there longer. Like, no, stay.
Sometimes you do because I
Yeah.
know that it breaks up a retail day, but also you just don't want to be that guy who's sniffing around for too long. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I guess with the graffiti side of things, you must get a whole gamut of people coming in who are like, hey, man, check out my work, and you're gonna have to pull, oh yeah, that's cool, and all that sort of thing. Or are people kind of more reserved with that sort of stuff?
Okay, so again, since early days at Obese, my whole approach is don't ask, don't tell. So I've got people that have been coming into shop like since Obese days, and now with me at Union Heights, and they've been there since day one. I still don't know what they write.
Yep. And they're probably cool
Because it's
like that.
not for me to ask.
No, but
That's,
I just
you know what I mean?
presume
Like,
most people would tell you a lot of the
yeah,
time.
yeah. But if you come in and you want to tell me, you want to show me, then
Yep.
you've initiated that, and then I'm all about it. And then I'll ask you, oh fuck, I remember you did this spot here.
Yep.
Was that like nuts? Was it crazy? What happened? You know, like, oh, you roll with that dude, man. Is he a good dude? You know, like I might ask questions, but I've never ever had the intention of like you're selling paint to someone and they've bought whatever amount of cans and they've bought 50 fat caps, you know, like 50 cyclones and 20 pink dots, and you don't go, hey, so what yard are you hitting tonight, mate? Fucking put us up, brah.
Yeah.
It's like,
I
don't ask
thought
questions.
people would have sort of thrown that sort of stuff at you.
Nah.
Really?
A lot of riders don't want heat. They don't want attention.
Anyone. Yeah. Okay.
End of the day, I'm just some idiot fucking working the counter.
Yeah.
They don't know who I am.
They're not looking for validation from you.
Nah, not from me.
Yep.
I'm just a schmuck behind the counter.
Yeah. No, I just.
But, you know, and then I've had guys, I know who they are. I know they're fucking, you know, heavy, big-time fucking kings and stuff. And it's just like, yep, how you doing? Do you need this? Do you need that? Whatever, you know, so...
You get a whole gamut.
Yeah, you know. And then again, you get, like, the kids that are starting out, you know, and they're little toys and they're buying their markers and this and that. It's like, fuck, have a sticker, go do this, you know, whatever. When you're 18, or come in with your mum to buy paint, but I'm not selling you paint until you're 18.
Yep.
Oh, come on, man. Like, nah.
No.
The fines are stupid, you know. Like,
Yeah.
I don't get it why that stuff still exists. But anyway. But yeah, it's always about, I always respect people's, you know, their right to, you know, to keep it a secret. And that's same as, and that goes across the board for DJs and stuff. It's not like, you know, I'll go, oh, you're DJ, let's get a photo or whatever, you know, like. Yeah, one of the funniest moments that happened, side note, was, you know, Sean Cooper used to be the door person, you know, the admin guy at Chapel Tattoo. So mad bass player, plays funk scene, whole thing. And one morning he comes in with the rapper Macklemore.
Yeah,
You know that dude? You know,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know that
Thrift shop.
thrift shop guy.
Yeah.
Comes in with a thrift shop guy in the shop. His son's like rings and goes, "Hey man, I got Macklemore in for a tattoo. I'm gonna bring him up to the shop. Get ready." I'm like, "Okay, cool." He rocks in. "Hey Frank, how you doing, man? This is Macklemore." Macklemore. "Hey man. Cool shop."
Cool shop.
Flicks through the records. "See ya, buddy. Doors that way." You know, like he didn't give a shit.
Nah.
But then I've had Lord Finesse in there, Large Professor, and they've come in for an in-store signing before they did their show at, where was it? Somewhere in the city, not Banana Alley. It was, can't remember the venue. But anyway, so at 5:30, 6 o'clock, they were in there for an in-store signing. Lord Finesse is like, I'm just like, oh my God, it's Lord Finesse and Large Professor. I'm like fucking like excited as fuck, but I'm just like, okay, how you doing? My name's Frank. How you going? Yeah, good man, good. And they're signing shit, and then and then at one point, Lord Finesse turns around, looks at me, goes, "Man, I like your shop. We don't have stuff like this in New York."
Really?
And I went, "What do you mean you don't? Like, you've got like the scrapyard, you've got this, you got that." And he goes, yeah, but not like this. And I was like, fuck, sick.
Yeah.
You know, he's a rapper / producer I respect, who's giving me props for what we're doing in Melbourne, you know, like fucking points on the board for Melbourne, you know.
Yeah, I think that happens with a lot of the international, the American rappers. They come over here and they say hip hop culture is really alive and well in other parts of the world because it isn't huge. It's still it's at its core. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. It is changing though. Like, I think we'll always have our New Yorkish kind of underground hip hop scene, you know, like our Oz hip hop scene. And the four elements, and you know, we all know that things are sort of broken off, and the breakers go off and do their own thing. And graffiti art has not always been about hip hop; it's always come from roots of rock and funk and punk, you know. So, but I think, you know, that period, that era of the four elements will always have its place and existence anyway. And you know, there's places where when I travelled through Europe where that kind of lifestyle was so strong, it was almost like it was stronger there in La Spezia in Italy than probably what it was is in New York, you know, because it's not diluted. But you know, fast forward to today, you know, the whole industry's changed, music's changed. Is hip hop rap anymore? Is rap even hip hop anymore? You know, like,
yeah, but
that's another story.
It is a whole new story, but it's awesome. Like, because obviously, with what you're doing, all people that are pressing vinyl and they're doing it from an Aussie Melbourne perspective, or even anywhere in Australia, you'll most likely stock it if you're feeling it. You'll have them come in, you'll take the flick with them, you'll put it up. So you're always giving back, and I think the Aussie community, the Aussie hip hop community, gets behind all these people, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Look, it's again super simple. Philosophy I have is I've got an open door. Come in with your music, bring it in. Let's chuck it in in the crates. Let's put it on the CD rack. I still have a CD rack just for local stuff. I don't import CDs anymore. So if you're an artist putting out music, bring it in. Mm-hmm. There's no reason why your record or CD shouldn't be in the shop. If it's not there, that's sometimes an artist's choice, and that's up to them, you know, whatever.
Will you vet it? Will you listen to it and be like, nah, this isn't really our steez, or that
you know
sort
what?
of thing?
It's I don't think there hasn't been that many releases that I go, man, this is just complete garbage, or man, this is like some kind of, you know, like new wave weird shit. Because a lot of the new stuff, they don't put out CD. They're not putting money into vinyl. They're just worried about their single being played on Spotify.
Yeah.
And then, okay, that's not working. Let's drop another single and, you know, 6 TikTok 30-second clips for the song.
Yep.
you know. So
you're an open door for anyone who's releasing Aussie hip hop that is putting it out on wax or whatever. You'll listen to it and you'll potentially stock it for these people.
absolutely, man. You go dig through our website now if you want, or come into the shop and see who we stock, the labels that we're aligned with. You know, like, without them, I'm nothing. You know, like, I'm the spot for these places, all these labels to come and be a part of, man. And I'm always humbled that, you know, people that I respect call me and go, "Hey, Frank, we've reserved X amount of copies for you to sell in store," knowing that they could have sold those 200 copies online, you know? Like, I don't need to name who those artists are, because if you follow the shop, you already know.
Mm-hmm.
You know who's come in and gone, "Man, Frank, bless up, man. Here's 10 copies of the record for you to sell."
Mm-hmm.
So people come in to buy it, you know? Like, I'll do that thing where I'll work out a deal with a label. They've got 190 records. They've got 200 records. They sell 190 online. And then there's 10 for in-store, but you got to walk in to buy it. I don't put it online, you know? Like, everyone's got the equal opportunity to buy something online, but it's like, these artists, these labels are saying, "Oh, we're doing it for Melbourne, we're doing it for Union Heights," you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
And then those people come in, they buy the record, they might buy some paint, they might buy a T-shirt.
man, or they buy the latest Miles to Go 7-inch, and I go, "You like that? Have you heard this?" You know, it's what we used to do back in the day in a record shop. It's like, "Oh, you like OT, man? You're gonna like this dude."
Yeah, upselling.
You know? Well,
It is, but it's
it's
in
an
the right.
upsell, but it's also me being a fan saying, "Hey, man, you like this style of hip hop? Are you aware of Kill Squad?" And they go, "Who's that?"
Yeah,
And I go, "Oh, it's Bigfoot and Wolsey and Heater
yeah.
and Overproof Pete." And they go like, "Oh, I know Overproof Pete."
And
You
then
know,
they go
like,
tell their friends, "Well, where'd you find out about
man.
this?" Or Frank got me wise.
Yeah. You know, there's still that element, you know, like, I think for as awesome as the internet, social media is and blah, 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 I still believe we still learn a lot off each other from talking to each other, you know, like, you learn things that, you know, like a lot of stuff that has been shed through the podcasts here on that you've run, you'd never read that online, you know, some of these anecdotes, you know?
Yep.
So, you know, people still communicate, which is funny because I know this is going on YouTube, right?
No, but this is why I'm big about doing it in person. Like, I try and do these little online things, but I think talking to someone, if we're having a chat on Skype, it's not as real as talking right now. You know what I mean? And I think that that's a big part of it. It's the same as going into a retail shop and buying something and conversing with you and you handing it to me and shaking your hand and here's some stickers.
Yeah, man.
That's not happening as much online. It's cool that we can do it for people that are in other areas, but I think we don't want to lose that sort of stuff.
No.
But this takes me to the whole record thing is really cool, and obviously someone who's I've DJ'd a bit, but you definitely have for a long time, and it must be dangerous, man. You keep like a DJ owning a record store like it's a kid in a candy store a little bit.
It is, yeah.
But I guess you get a good discount.
Yeah, I get a great discount. But I'll be honest, man. I've slowed down. I do still buy the records I really love. A lot of the local stuff, I'll always cop, a copy for myself. International stuff, man, if I really love the artist, I still buy the record.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool for any music just to support the artist because, you know, it's hard to make money as an artist.
Yeah, but I've done that thing too where obviously I DJ a lot with Serato and stuff, so I'll still do that thing where I'll buy the artist's album through Bandcamp and give them that $10, $15 because I know they get more out of that than me constantly playing it through streaming services, right?
Yeah, I did it the other day with a Pirate Mafia record. Like, I've got the wax, but I bought it on just like, well, you know, helps because I'm always streaming it as well. You know? All those little things add up, I guess. Yeah. With the DJing, we haven't even really touched on it, but you have played some supports for some massive artists.
Yeah. Back in, I don't know what years they were.
There was no, but you did.
Okay, so I got I played a few spots at the SB. I've played. I played at the. No, I haven't played the Forum. I played at that place that used to be on Swanson Street. I think it's Max Watts now. What was that called?
Hi-Fi Bar.
Hi-Fi Bar. I've played. I've opened for Ghostface, Atmosphere, Evidence. A few internationals here and there, but one of the best things I did was touring with Muff and Pluto.
Yep.
Back in 2006 to about 2008.
And had you hook up with them through Obese?
Yeah. So Dan, Muff, and I used to work at Obese together back then. Like probably since 2004, Dan was working there. And obviously known Lee, like Platonic, through all the shit at Obese and whatever. And there was a point, like they'd just released the Heaps Good album and were starting a tour.
Mm-hmm. And that's getting lots of radio play as well.
Yeah, Heaps Good. The video clip was fucking amazing and getting lots of play. Their DJ at the time was DJ Effects. And, man, he's dope DJ, right?
He's awesome. He was at that gig the other day.
Yeah, he was at the Markets.
The Zone 2.
Zone 2 Markets DJing upstairs. Yep. Shout out DJ Effects.
Mm-hmm. And Perry was after him. He's sick too.
Yeah, Pierre. And, he's DJing at the Bias gig that just got announced this week. So I think the story was with Effects, he had a day job and he couldn't commit to doing a lot of the tour, and an opportunity arose, and they were like, I'd be sitting there with Dan during the week and he's telling me about shows and stuff, and I was like, just sort of like hinting at little things he could do to make his live show better, because he would tell me about little things that were sort of, playing on his mind on, what could I do here? And I said, you could think about doing this, this and this. So they're always like supporting each other. It's what you do at work. You always have a chat about whatever. And it got to a point where he's like, hey, man, maybe you should come and join us on tour and be our tour DJ, because you've got experience. Because I was doing all the stuff in Wollongong with the Argonauts and my own group called My Spherical. Mm-hmm. So, where I do cuts but also do backup vocals. Do the drop-ins and this and that. Mm-hmm. So with Muff and Pluto, it was Dan up front, like Muff up front, Pluto on the drums. Pluto was always busy like drumming and making sure everything was in sync with the music and stuff. So he wasn't doing backups. And it was at a time where you couldn't afford to get a second person to be the backup, do your ad-libs and whatever and hype stuff up during the song. So, we'd rehearse and I'd be that guy, taking it back to that old school kind of vibe. And I don't think...
With a boom mic like this?
Yeah, literally. Literally, like fucking, set up the mic and at sound check and, do your cuts, and then in between, your cuts and your hook in the verses, you'd be doing like da-da-da, doing your backups for Dan. And I don't think there were many DJs doing that in the local hip-hop scene. That's probably because they were really fucking good DJs. And they could, basically it was like a turntablist would be your DJ, like that.
But also
that
it's
quality.
Different because Platonic is playing live drums, which wasn't really happening a whole lot as
well. No.
So it's an interesting dynamic.
It was a very interesting dynamic. You had a live drummer, your rapper up at the front, and this hyped up dude doing cuts every now and then, but fucking getting on the mic. And when Dan was trying to get his breath and drink a beer or water, would communicate with the crowd and just say fucking dumb shit and engage and just have a bit of a laugh and sort of lighten the mood.
Yep.
Or whatever. So that was great. That was like 2 years of my life, which was fucking awesome. Touring with those guys, the highs and lows of touring and whatever else. So, went through all of Australia, all the major cities, some regional areas, even played at Karratha.
Yeah, right.
For one of those Triple J. Is it not?
It's the One Night Stand.
One Night Stand.
Yeah.
We played there with Forget the name of the Aussie band. They're so huge. I should know it. Anyway, played with them, which is really embarrassing not to remember who it was.
We'll figure out who it is. But no, that one night stand thing is a really cool concept because it takes a big gig to a regional town that wouldn't normally get a big gig. So it's a huge deal for the community as far as art, but it's also it pumps some money into the community. All the local takeaway shops and pubs and stuff obviously get a burst of cash. So it's a good concept.
Oh, it was unreal. We flew. So Karatha's like north of Perth in the mining districts, you know. So we flew over to Perth and got another smaller plane up into Karatha, like out in the middle of nowhere. And it was crazy. The Whitlams.
The Whitlams, there you go.
And I was like, you know, I'm a hip-hop head, right? I'm like, yeah, I'm fucking hip-hop. Everything else is like, whatever. And I thought, oh, yeah, the Whitlams, yeah, whatever. They're super popular. I don't care for their music. And I sat side of stage there and watched their whole set, and I was just like, wow, these guys know how to fucking play music. They were amazing. Like their musicianship, their just stage presence, everything. And then, you know, sort of after the gig, everyone was staying at the same hotel and, you know, talking to one or two of the band members, and just, they're so down to earth. Just totally flipped my whole perspective on that kind of shit, you know? Like,
opened your eyes a little bit.
Oh, heaps. You know, there's nothing better than meeting a really talented musician or a graffiti artist or something, and they're just straight down the line good people. You know, there's that famous saying, never meet your heroes, because I've met some rappers that I've held like fucking up there on the top of the mountain, met them, and I'm going, fuck, I wish I didn't meet you.
Yeah.
But then, through touring and all that shit, you've only met that person at a certain point of time in that day.
They might have a shit day.
They've probably had a shit day. They've probably got off the phone to their tour manager or someone and had a shit conversation, come around the corner, you're all like, hey man, I've been a fan since day one and I've got this album, can you sign this? And this song did this for me and got me through this period. And this guy's like gone, oh, fuck, you know?
Yeah.
And then you go, oh, what a rude, you know, mother. But it's not, you know, because I saw that happen from the side of touring with some of the bands where, you know, like you'd be with someone and some shit's gone down, and then these ecstatic fans have come up and go, I love you, and they're just like going, yeah, right, whatever, and they've just got to go off and deal with something that's drained their energy 2 minutes ago, you know?
Yeah, it's a shame, because I think a lot of those times, you might have caught the person at the wrong time.
Absolutely.
But I'm sure there's assholes out there too.
And there's a lot of them.
Heaps of them.
You know?
Yeah.
A lot of rapper assholes, a lot of graph writer assholes, but then there's so many fucking good ones too.
Yeah, and I think it must be interesting because you've been in this sort of graph rap scene for a while. You must meet people that maybe they had a bit of an ego and they weren't the nicest people to deal with, but as they mature and as you get to know them a bit, then you start to realise, oh yeah, people are maturing a bit, you know?
Yeah. So it's like so many funny stories growing up, going to gigs, meeting writers, meeting people. They're like writers that I met 15 years ago, like in their early 20s, that you just didn't want to get on their bad side because they were just like straight up. And now, 15 years later, they've had kids, this and that, and they're like a totally different person, nicest
different
person.
perspective on life. Yeah.
You know, and I think that's that whole thing, you know, growing up in your teen years into your 20s, there's so much going on in your life that, you know, I find it sad though if people still have that kind of energy and they've hit their 30s, moved into their 40s, and they're holding on to a lot of that.
Yeah, they must have issues. They're dealing with
right?
stuff that they haven't.
Yeah,
they're not dealing with it, I guess.
Yeah, you know, and I see that through work. You know, I have a lot of different types of people come through, and we make time for everyone. You know, like we always try and be friendly, helpful. You know, make sure you get what you need. But there's just some people you're like, oh, just don't even try.
Yeah.
Just let them get what they want.
So aside from DJing gigs, there's some stories I've heard about you potentially emceeing some events as well.
Yeah, yep. So there was a period there that was pretty notorious for being the host at a lot of shows. Especially if I put the show on, I was like stage managing, hosting, getting people on off stage, going, oh, you know, next up is whoever. But how that all started in Melbourne anyway was, do you remember back as the Hilltop Hoods were starting to break, they played a series of shows at the Corner Hotel, and it was like one show had sold out, so the venue opened up a second show. Second show sold out, so I opened a third.
Just
and then
after the second album came out?
Yeah.
I went to one of those ones, yeah.
So 800 capacity venue room, you know, they end up selling 4 nights in a row. And it sort of like started Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So it's the first show Sunday night. I'm hanging out the back, you know, before the doors open with Terry from Obese, you know, he used to do accounts and stuff. And we're near the merch stand. Tyrion comes walking up from the stage area. He's pretty pumped, you know, it's sold out show. Everyone's in a good mood. And he's like, man, it's going to be a good night, blah, blah, blah. And then he's turned around and goes, fuck, we don't have a host for the night. And we're like, yeah, a host would be dope, you know, like someone introduce people, talk shit. And he goes, you can do that kind of shit, Frank, can't you? You talk, you know.
You talk?
You talk.
you fit the bill?
You can tell stories, introduce people. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. He goes, done, you're on. You're hosting the show. I'm like, fuck, sick, you know, like, I'm not just going to stand there backstage and watch it. I'll actually get up on stage. And so, yeah, so I started hosting gigs through that. And it was like the first night getting up and just hyping the crowd before Hilltops, which wasn't hard because people were pumped to see Hilltop Hoods. And I think it was Muff and Platonic were actually supporting, but I obviously wasn't DJing for them then. It was effects. So I did that, and I did that for 4 nights straight.
And that would have been the biggest run of Aussie hip-hop shows then, I reckon. That would have been, like, that was when they really tipped over into...
Yeah, and from then on, I don't think they ever played a show that was less than 2,000, 3,000 people.
Yeah.
And that was like, I can't remember the year, but we all know. It's when the calling dropped. And
I think it was like 2003.
Yeah.
About that.
3, 4, yeah.
Something like that.
And then, yeah, from there I went, you know, I was hosting like obese block parties and that kind of stuff. And that was trippy, just standing on that stage at the Forum.
Yeah.
Saying to people, all right, now you're going to put your hands up in the air and say this. And people would just like say it. And you're like, ha, 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 ha.
I have power.
I have power. It was dope, man. It was a really good time in my life being part of that crew with Obese, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, always hold it dear to my heart, regardless of all the ups and downs, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
No, man, totally. And the Forum is probably, in my opinion, the best venue in Melbourne.
What a shame.
Well, it's still there.
It's become apartments, hasn't it?
No,
or is the actual Forum...
The Forum or the Metro you're talking about?
Oh, no, the Metro, sorry.
Yeah, the Forum's still there.
The Forum's still there.
Gone.
Sorry, I played it. It was at the Metro.
Yeah.
Yeah, Forum's amazing, sorry.
Yeah, Forum is amazing. But Metro, yeah, was cool. That's I used to be a regular Metro. That was one of my first jobs, working at the Metro.
DJing?
Yeah, on Saturday nights. It was
retro.
Yeah. No, it was just the commercial night. Anyway, we're not.
We can flip this podcast about you.
No, we don't. We don't want it. Well, Steele the other day, who was on, he was like, "Man, you worked at the Metro." He's like, "I used to do every Thursday there. I'd introduce all the fucking yeah." So
yeah, wow.
The Metro was sick. They used to have the DMCs there.
Man.
I think I saw J-Red DMCs there in 2003. I reckon that was.
Like over 2,000 people for a turntablist battle. What a day. What a period.
And Hilltop Hoods supported Cypress Hill as well. I remember that, right. Like the year after as well.
Yeah.
I saw some good hip-hop gigs while I was
there.
there.
I remember seeing Run the Jewels there.
Yeah. Naughty by Nature I saw there.
Yeah. I was managing an artist at the time called Elacor. Shout outs to Donnie.
Yeah, he's around St Kilda. I used to see him around St Kilda.
PCYC.
Yeah.
And we did he did support for J5 2 nights in a row. That was unreal.
Yeah.
At that venue, like some of the nicest dudes in the industry, those guys.
Yeah,
man.
and it was a sick venue.
Mad.
Yeah.
Great stage, good vantage
And
points.
remember the backstage with all the tags on the walls and everything?
Yeah. Just all the multiple rooms and stuff. It was
Yeah.
great.
Good times. I mean, we could
All right,
talk for hours.
yeah,
we could, and we potentially will again, hopefully. Man, thanks heaps for coming. Look, shout out your store, Union Heights. It's on Chapel Street. What number is it?
136 in the mix.
136. You're in the 3181. Yeah, the 136. And you can get in there. And also online, where do people buy some shit online if they don't
It's just unionheights.com.au.
But go into the shop and get the full experience.
Yeah, man, come on through. Shout out to everyone that supports on the regular.
Yeah, for sure. All right, thanks, man, for coming. And also thank you for helping me, because you have been a great sounding board for me doing this thing so far. So, yeah, man, you're a legend, and I appreciate it. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Keep
man.
it going on and on and on.
3,000.